Chapter 184. Xing Yu's Linggang had not only injured the surface of his body, but at the same time, the murderous aura of spiritual energy and the sharp aura of the Linggang had also drilled into his body. He wouldn't be able to recover without at least 10 days or half a month of recuperation. Just as he was about to retreat and return to his original position, he suddenly felt an enormous aura of light approaching. Furthermore, the other party had clearly locked onto him. Where did this aura of light come from? It didn't originate from the Exorcist Mountain Pass. And Luo Xian was shocked and didn't dare to be negligent. An enormous flame suddenly burst forth from his body. His disheveled hair fluttered despite the absence of wind, and tyrannical spiritual energy fluctuations blossomed from his body. In his right hand, a serrated longsword appeared. It went straight for the enemy who had launched a surprise attack. And Luo Xian originally had 2 swords, but his other longsword had just been smashed by Xing Yu. Even a demon god didn't necessarily have a powerful weapon, and he often changed his weapons. The pair of longswords in his hands were merely legendary-grade equipment. Compared to the pair of epic-grade daggers in Xing Yu's hands, there was a huge difference. The moment the huge orange shield was about to collide with An Luo Xian, it suddenly stopped. Immediately after, An Luo Xian was horrified to discover that there was an incomparably sharp aura coming from the other party's shield. That powerful force of will did not attack his body, but attacked his mental power. An Luo Xian felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. It was as if the sharp intent was trying to mess up his thoughts. Under such circumstances, the power of the serrated flaming sword he had slashed out suddenly weakened a little. Boom! The orange light collided, and under the violent collision, the golden figure that was like a meteor chasing after the moon revealed its true form. In the violent collision, neither he nor An Luo Xian gained the upper hand, and both were forced to retreat. However, An Luo Xian's situation was clearly worse. When the orange shield collided with his serrated sword, the other party's strength was great, but he could still resist it with his cultivation. However, an incomparably pure explosive power of the light element came from the shield. It was the light attribute Linggang. Not only that, but an extremely sharp willpower also erupted at the same time. An Luo Xian was already injured before, and suddenly suffering such a collision naturally worsened his injuries. His whole body burst into flames, and the intense flames even dyed the sky red. However, what made him feel at ease was that he could already clearly see a pitch-black light flickering behind the rider on the back of a majestic starlit unicorn. The demon powerhouse who had attacked Kai, together with him, had also turned back to attack Kai. After the collision, just as the old force dissipated and the new force had not yet recovered, he launched a sneak attack. The knight, whose whole body was shrouded in orange light, had clearly anticipated this. He turned around at lightning speed, and the moment he collided with the dark short sword, his whole body froze in place in the distance. Ding! With a crisp sound, the orange knight's whole body shone with a golden light, and his body, along with the starlight unicorn, retreated in the air. Orange-red halos burst out from his shield. It was obvious that he did not have an easy time withstanding this attack. But at this moment, the flaming lion, An Luo Xian, had already opened his mouth wide, and the dark tip of the sword had quietly emerged from his chest. All assassins were good at seizing opportunities, and this was obviously not unique to the demons who were constantly shuttling through space. As the master of the Assassin Temple and a 9th-grade hero, how could Xing Yu not be good at this? The powerful knight, who was wearing the golden foundation armor, had attracted the attention of the 2 demon gods. Meanwhile, Xing Yu had long since escaped into space in the distance. The cooperation between an assassin and a knight had existed since ancient times in the Temple League. When the knight on a golden pedestal and An Luo Xian collided, although Xing Yu did not know what An Luo Xian would do, he instinctively believed that the knight would definitely create an opportunity for him to launch a sneak attack. In fact, this was indeed the case. Luoxian's thoughts were disrupted by the powerful sword intent that the knight on a golden pedestal had unleashed with his mental strength, and his internal injuries had been aggravated. When he saw the knight being attacked by his comrade, he had relaxed. This was when Luoxian was at his weakest. Xing Yu's attack was just a beat slower than that of the demons. This ingenious delay had resulted in a massacre. Boom! Luoxian, the flaming lion demon, was sent flying as he screamed in pain. A demon god's body was indeed strong. Even when Xing Yu unleashed his full strength, Luoxian's body did not shatter into pieces. However, a large hole about a foot in diameter had appeared in his chest. It seemed like he was not going to survive. However, chivalrous Xing Yu had no intention of letting Luoxian go. The dagger in his other hand pierced into the back of Luoxian's head at the same time as the explosion. A demon god's life force was extremely strong, especially when the demon god pillar was nearby. Therefore, he had to kill his opponent completely to ensure Luoxian's death. Luoxian died a wrongful death. He never expected that his sneak attack would turn into a counterattack. He did not even have time to borrow the power of his demon god pillar before he was fatally injured. When the same explosion appeared in his head, the last trace of his life force was also gone. Xing Yu was much more experienced than Long Haochen and the others. Once Luoxian died, his demon god crown was sealed in Luoxian's body by Xing Yu's spiritual power before his demon god crown could escape. He would use it when he returned. If the demon god crown could not escape, it would be much more difficult for the flaming lion demon to recreate the demons. It would take at least a year for the demon god pillar to recover its vitality and give birth to a demon god seed to choose a successor. If the demon god crown returned, it would immediately be able to find a successor among the demons. It would also be able to bestow a portion of Mr. Luoxian's strength to this successor. Speaking of which, when Long Haochen and the others killed the snake demon god, Andamari's demon god crown had been eaten by Haoyue. Long Haochen did not know how well Haoyue had digested it. Just as Xing Yu's second attack was about to be unleashed, on the other side, an orange-red shield wall once again blocked the demon god assassin, preventing him from rushing over to the flaming lion demon's rescue. The entire battle seemed to have taken a long time to describe, but in reality, it had unfolded in the blink of an eye. From the moment the two demon gods ambushed Kai to the moment the flaming lion demon and Luoxian perished, only a few blinks of an eye had passed. In such a short period of time, when both sides were roughly equal in strength, apart from the sudden arrival of the knight on a golden pedestal, they were able to kill a demon god because of the cooperation between the demon god and Xing Yu. This was their first time working together, but there was an invisible tacit understanding between them. They had full trust in each other, which was why they were able to achieve such a good result. The knight on a golden pedestal was riding on his starlight unicorn, constantly retreating in the air. Every time he retreated, the orange-red glow on his shield grew stronger. Shield wall plus divine block plus continuous block. He had perfectly displayed the profound meaning of the guardian knight. Although the enemy's every attack consumed an enormous amount of his spiritual energy, in such a short period of time, the enemy did not have the time to erupt with an even more powerful attack. He could only look on helplessly as Luoxian perished under Xing Yu's sword. In the distant demon camp, apart from the flaming lion demon's demon god pillar, the other 7 demon god pillars simultaneously shone brightly. As for the exorcist mountain pass, the sky suddenly distorted. An extremely swift and fierce murderous aura, like a large net, welcomed the advance of the demon gods. The black silhouette of the knight on a golden pedestal abruptly flashed backwards, escaping into the air and disappearing without a trace. The battlefield in the sky was closer to the exorcist mountain pass, and the reinforcements of the assassin temple were clearly a bit faster than the demon gods. If he did not leave now, he would end up like an Luoxian, forever staying here. One should never think that a battle between powerhouses of the ninth step would be incomparably long. The stronger one's strength, the more dangerous the collision would be. Unless one had a terrifying defense like the Bear Veilfar, otherwise, in a collision between powerhouses of the ninth step, life or death would often be decided in an instant. Withdrawing the shield wall, the knight on a golden pedestal let out a low groan and spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Resisting the continuous attacks of the demon god assassin was not an easy task. If not for the Starlight Unicorn and the epic-ranked Golden Foundation armor on his body providing sufficient spiritual energy support, allowing his defense to maintain at the level of Lingang, at most 3 attacks, his spiritual energy might not be able to support such a high-intensity defense. A powerhouse of the ninth step, moreover an assassin who specialized in offense, how terrifying was his attack power! If it was really a one-on-one confrontation, the knight on a golden pedestal would definitely be in danger. Of course, that was under the condition that he did not intend to escape, and only wanted to fight to the death. He and Xing Yu did not retreat, but instead looked at the distant demon god pillars. The air around them distorted even more violently, but not a single figure appeared. The flaming demon lion Anluoxian's corpse was in Xing Yu's hands. The demon god crown of a demon god was a treasure, and with it, he could at least continuously fire a magic cannon for 3 years without running out of supplies, or use it to create epic-ranked equipment. Woo woo, the horn for the demons to retreat sounded, and the madly attacking demon army immediately retreated like the tide, and the 7 shining demon god pillars in the distance also dimmed. Ha ha, Xing Yu laughed heartily, delightful. Finally, I can vent my anger. Xing Yu had a fiery temper, and after the Holy War, he had been suppressed in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Because both sides did not wish for the ninth step powerhouses to join the battlefield, which would lead to more large-scale casualties, the ninth step powerhouses only confronted each other and did not join the battlefield. Thus, no matter how anxious he was, he could not take the initiative to attack. Even mobilizing the city's defenses was done by Xing Lingxin. This great hero always had a feeling that he could not use his strength, and this feeling was not very comfortable. When Kai Er was suddenly attacked, Xing Yu, whose attention had always been on his great-granddaughter, was the first to act. Fortunately, his reaction was fast enough, otherwise, Kai Er would really be in danger. Although the death scythe was powerful, the huge gap in cultivation was not something a weapon could completely make up for. To be precise, the more powerful a weapon was, the more powerhouses were needed to use it, so that it could truly display its advantages. As for the process of killing the flaming demon lion Anluoxian, even Xing Yu himself felt that it was somewhat unreal. Perhaps in the history of the demons, Anluoxian was probably the demon god who had the easiest way of being killed. Anluoxian's death was not only because of the knight on a golden pedestal's obstruction and Xing Yu's surprise attack, but because he had underestimated the situation. And everything had happened too quickly. Otherwise, as long as he activated the distant demon god pillar, no matter what, he would not have been killed by Xing Yu in a single strike. Unfortunately, in this world, assumptions were the most unreliable. Brother, thanks. This spoil of war belongs to you. Xing Yu was not stingy at all as he handed Anluoxian's corpse to the knight on a golden pedestal. The knight on a golden pedestal's body stiffened. Greetings, Sir Hero. I cannot accept this. Acting Holy Knight of Knights Templars, Long Jingjin No. 12, reporting for duty. That's right, this knight on a golden pedestal who had obstructed 2 demon gods in succession and created an opportunity for Xing Yu to kill the flaming demon lion, wasn't this Long Haochen? Long Haochen and Han Yu swiftly traveled all the way to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. While they were still far away, Long Haochen's spiritual force sensed the great battle here. He had Han Yu enter the Exorcist Mountain Pass first, while he rode the Star King into the sky to see if he was needed. Although the mission Long Tianyin had given him wasn't too serious, as long as it was within his ability, Long Houchen would do his best to accumulate contribution points. When his attention was focused on the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, he almost instantly found Kai, who was fighting the enemy. The Grim Reaper scythe was the most direct target. Long Houchen was overjoyed. Just as he was about to fly down to meet up with Kai, the scene of Kai being ambushed appeared. What happened next was simple. Long Houchen and the Star King's strength fused as one, rushing down with all their strength, like a golden meteor rushing into the battlefield. There wasn't enough time to save Kai, but because of Kai-Er's crisis, Long Houchen was anxious and raised his strength to the limit. With his many years of battle experience, he had a rather accurate grasp of the battlefield. Seeing that Kai was fine, the two demon gods quickly retreated. The place where he appeared was in the enemy's path. That was the scene of the flaming demon lion being killed. Xing Yu calling him brother made Long Houchen's eyelids twitch. This was messing up the seniority, so he hurriedly changed the topic. He wanted to hide his identity. Now clearly wasn't a good time to say who he was. Hearing Long Houchen's voice and words, Xing Yu's face immediately revealed a puzzled expression. This voice was very familiar, but he couldn't recognize it immediately. He could only hear that this Jingjin 12 wasn't very old. With his understanding of the Knights Templars, Jingjin 12's pedestal should be in the Knights Templars' treasury. Clearly, this Jingjin 12 was the newly promoted knight on a golden pedestal, but he also said that he was the acting Holy Knight Captain. The position of Holy Knight Captain was second only to the Temple Master and Deputy Temple Master in the Knights Templars. How could a newly promoted knight on a golden pedestal assume this position? However, no matter what doubts appeared in Xing Yu's heart, he didn't doubt Long Houchen's identity in the slightest. He had already used his actions to prove it. Let's return to the city walls first. Xing Yu waved his hand and flew together with Long Houchen towards the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The tyrannical killing intent and distorted fluctuations in the air also slowly retreated. The Exorcist Mountain Pass Assassin Temple didn't win this battle, but killing a demon god greatly boosted the morale of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Xing Yu flew to the front of the Exorcist Mountain Pass and suddenly lifted the corpse of the flame demon lion in his hand. Immediately, the Exorcist Mountain Pass walls erupted in cheers like a tsunami. Many soldiers were so excited that they shed tears. Silently looking at the Exorcist Mountain Pass that was already broken beyond recognition, Long Houchen only felt his heart tighten. As the fuse of this holy war, the Holy Alliance had never uttered a single word of complaint towards him. It was unknown how many soldiers of the Holy Alliance had died in this holy war. I will definitely destroy the demons and restore peace to the Holy Demon Continent. There will be no more wars. Long Houchen secretly vowed in his heart. At the same time, he slowly began to chant an incantation. Xing Yu looked at Long Houchen in astonishment. He could feel that the knight on a golden pedestal's body began to emit extremely dense light element fluctuations. Moreover, this degree of purity of light element was something he had never seen before. Long Houchen's chanting voice was very gentle. The incantation's incantation tone was somewhat deep, but it wasn't suppressed in the slightest. The clear incantation was like a dancing spirit that constantly spat out. Around his body, a large number of golden specks of light began to surge. Xing Yu took a deep breath. His eyes couldn't help but reveal a deep sense of gratitude as he said in a low voice, "Don't force yourself." Long Houchen naturally couldn't answer him, but the incantation he was chanting became increasingly clear. Tiny specks of golden light began to appear around his body. At the beginning, there were only a few dozen of them, and each one was only the size of a soybean. They were unremarkable, but as the light specks continued to increase, everyone was shocked to feel that there seemed to be an additional circle in the sky that could attract all the light attribute in the world. In the sky, near and far, similar specks of light began to appear. They rapidly gathered around Long Houchen's body. Once these specks of light gathered around him, they spiraled into the sky. Xing Yu didn't retreat to the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass's city wall. Instead, he flew into the distance. The demons were paying a price for the Exorcist Mountain Pass, so he had to guarantee Long Haochen's safety. What would he do if another sneak attack from the demons appeared? It wasn't just him. Xing Yu didn't even need to issue an order. One after another, distorted figures of light quietly swept out from the top of the city walls. Together with Xing Yu, they formed a barrier in midair outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Together, they protected Long Haochen, who was continuously chanting the incantation. At this very moment, Long Haochen only felt that his heart was extremely clear. It was as if only by continuously chanting this difficult and lengthy incantation could he weaken the guilt in his heart. He entered a wonderful state. When the incantation started, the spiritual energy in his body was rapidly draining away. The spiritual energy that he had used to block the two great demon gods showed signs of drying up very quickly. However, when golden specks of light began to merge with him in the distant sky, he was astonished to discover that the spiritual energy in his body didn't decrease, but instead rose. It was rising at a slow and steady speed. He had originally planned to chant half of the incantation, so the half-completed incantation naturally continued. At this moment, his spiritual energy and senses were no longer on his own body. Rather, they had merged with the sky, merging with nature and the light element. For the first time, Long Haochen experienced the realm of God that Yi Xiaolei had talked about in the illusory paradise. God was everywhere, but also nowhere to be found. He was now not a caster of magic, but a conductor, commanding the power of God, commanding the light element. The God-favored made him a fulcrum. The emotions of kindness, sorrow, and devotion in his heart became his baton. He deeply experienced the righteousness, peace, kindness, integration, sacrifice, compassion, tolerance, and benevolence of the light element. At this moment, his emotions reached true harmony with the light. At this moment, he had truly become the Son of Light. The power of light never existed for the sake of killing. Therefore, even if Long Haochen became as strong as the Demon Emperor in the future, he would not be able to command the light element during an attack like this. But the magic he was casting now was different. It was a release based entirely on unity, tolerance, benevolence, and kindness. Without the slightest bit of selfishness or distracting thoughts, there was only a compassionate heart that wanted to help others at all costs. The spiral-shaped golden specks of light gradually rose into the sky, turning into a huge golden pillar of light with a diameter of more than 100 meters, connecting heaven and earth. At this moment, the demon god pillars in the distant demon camp were completely overshadowed by this golden pillar of light. The surging light element that rose to the sky caused all the demons to tremble. Although they could feel that this light was not aimed at them, as the demons of the dark element, they still felt an uncontrollable panic. Apart from this golden pillar of light, there was no other grand phenomenon. Finally, Long Haochen finished chanting the last syllable. From his body, a dazzling golden light suddenly bloomed with a seven-colored luster. His and the brilliant unicorn's spiritual power, which had been restored to its peak, was completely drained in an instant. However, they were still floating in the air, and their eyes became unprecedentedly bright. The sky turned golden. As far as the eye could see, everything turned golden. Faint golden raindrops began to fall from the sky, slowly drifting down. The raindrops were fine, and wherever they fell, they gave people a kind of gentle feeling. Every raindrop that fell on a person's body would turn into a very faint halo, quietly dispersing. Every raindrop also brought people a trace of gentle warmth. At the beginning, these traces of warmth weren't enough, but very quickly, people discovered that these gentle raindrops brought them an indescribable sense of comfort and tranquility. So much so that everyone would unconsciously look at Long Haochen, who was riding the brilliant star unicorn king in the air. Each and every one of them gradually calmed down from excitement, and from calmness back to excitement again. It was unknown how many emotions were surging within them. In the eyes of many low-level soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the current Long Houchen was like a radiant god that had descended, bestowing warmth upon them, sweeping away their fatigue and pain. A kind of feeling that was close to faith practically took root in their hearts in an instant. The area covered by this fine rain of light was really too large. Not only did it cover the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass, it even covered the battlefield as well as the distant demon camp. The demon god pillar once again shone. To humans, it was an infinitely beautiful radiance, but to demons, it was a fatal disaster. 7 similarly emitting an intense aura of darkness soared into the sky. With these 7 light pillars as the fulcrum, they formed a dark red light barrier that enveloped the entire demon camp. Without a doubt, the magic Long Houchen had just completed was a forbidden spell. Moreover, its area of effect was so large that even Xing Yu had never seen it before. At the same time, this magic was also the most gentle forbidden spell that Xing Yu had ever seen. The 9th step saints of the Temple of the Priests were also able to cast large-scale forbidden spell healing magic. However, the effect of their healing magic was much more direct than Long Houchen's, and the effect was also seemingly greater. Only, it wasn't as gentle as Long Houchen's magic, and its area of effect was also far smaller. To be able to cover a third of the Exorcist Mountain Pass was already something that only the apex experts of the Temple of the Priests could accomplish. However, this forbidden spell of Long Houchen was like a rain. Xing Yu had a very profound feeling. Bathing in this rain of light, not only did his body benefit, but also his spirit. This cleansing of the spirit, the treatment of inner wounds, was not the slightest bit inferior to the recovery of the body and the healing of injuries. The negative emotions in the hearts of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass quietly disappeared under this rain of light, and the injuries on their bodies also healed at a slow pace. Gradually, some of the soldiers began to kneel down on one knee towards Long Houchen in the air, performing their most noble etiquette. And this scene also spread at an astonishing speed above the walls of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. It wasn't only the low-level soldiers who knelt down, even some experts of the 5th and 6th step were the same. They were completely infected by the spiritual emotions contained in this rain of light. Those who could still stand were those with relatively strong spiritual energy, and their hearts were strong enough to defend themselves. At the same time, they were also a minority of people who weren't affected by the war. Like a miracle, the rain of light descended. Within the Exorcist Mountain Pass, there was basically no need for the commander to issue an order. A large number of injured people were quickly carried to the open space and bathed in the rain of light. Because of this sudden rain of light, the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass was covered in a faint layer of gold. On the light barrier jointly released by the 7 great demon gods, small golden ripples also appeared, and their light barrier that was filled with dark aura was also constantly purified by these golden ripples. The 7 great demon gods were all floating in front of their respective demon god pillars, their complexions grim. At this moment, they didn't feel like they were fighting against a light attribute forbidden spell, but rather, they felt like they were fighting against heaven's might, a heaven's might that was filled with essence energy. Kerr was also the same as the others, standing at the top of the wall, looking at the distant night on a golden pedestal in the air. She obviously wouldn't kneel down, but her eyes were already moist, and tears couldn't help but flow down her cheeks. Bathed in this rain of light, the injuries she had previously received gradually improved, and the oppressive feeling in her heart also quietly disappeared. If there was only one person in the Exorcist Mountain Pass who could recognize who this knight on a golden pedestal was, then, without a doubt, that person would definitely be her. She didn't recognize his aura, but she recognized the shield that they had obtained together in the gloomy swamp through life and death. It was spiral-shaped like a snail's shell, and it was filled with the aura of pure light, and it had an epic red-orange luster. Wasn't this the shield of Sun Moon Divine Snail? It's him, he's here, he's finally here. At this moment, Kai only felt as if her heart was completely pulled by Long Houchen in the air. The memories buried in the depths of her mind finally moved, and with all her might, it wanted to rush out. The seal that had been fiercely suppressing her memories also seemed to loosen a bit. Why don't you let me remember him? Why? The tears in Kai's eyes flowed even faster. Looking at Long Houchen in the air, her heart was fiercely aching. This divine rain of light persisted for no less than an hour. The golden color in the sky gradually dispersed, and the warm sunlight sprinkled on the earth. On the Exorcist Mountain Pass, cheers that were twice as loud as when flaming devil lion Luosien had been killed erupted once again. The Star King spread his wings and glided down to the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Xing Yu's figure flickered, and he quickly arrived at Long Houchen's side. But he was astonished to discover that after casting such a powerful forbidden spell, the aura of light emitted by Long Houchen's body was even denser than before. Although he couldn't sense any spiritual power fluctuations from his body, it was as if he and his starlight unicorn had been sent to the Exorcist Mountain Pass by the light elements, and the elemental power supported their bodies. This was a kind of realm, a realm that Xing Yu had never felt before. The spell Long Houchen had just cast was called Divine Rain. This light forbidden spell was something he had discovered while cultivating in the Cave of Illusion. In terms of healing effects, this night's light forbidden spell couldn't compare to the light forbidden spells of the Temple of the Priests. After all, the knight wasn't a professional healer. However, this Divine Rain spell had its own characteristic. The light rain that Divine Rain triggered was gentler and easier to absorb during healing. Moreover, the healing time was long. By relying on the prolonged healing, not only could it greatly boost the morale of one side, but it could also restore the physical strength of the person bathed in it. At the same time, it could purify the negative emotions in one's heart. In other words, in terms of single healing, Divine Rain couldn't compare to other forbidden spells, but it had many uses. Moreover, Divine Rain could only chant a third of the incantation or half of the incantation to activate the second forbidden spell, Divine Rain. In other words, this was a spell that could evolve, and according to the strength of the caster, it would emit different levels of healing effects. Of course, even if it was Divine Rain, it was still an 8th grade spell of the Guardian Knight. After all, it was an area of effect healing. But the Divine Rain spell that Long Houchen had just cast, in terms of area of effect, purity of light elements, and overall effect, far surpassed the original scope of Divine Rain. That instant of enlightenment and the ignition of his emotions, in addition to the activation of his god's favored constitution, allowed this spell to be cast almost perfectly. Even among the 5 demon pillars of the demons, perhaps only the Demon Emperor, the Moon Demon, and the Star Demon could cast it. The experts of the Assassin Temple responsible for protecting Long Houchen in the air returned to the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. On top of the wall, Sheng Lingxin had already commanded the officers and soldiers to give way to Long Houchen. When he landed on top of the wall, the experts of the Assassin Temple all subconsciously surrounded him. After casting such a powerful forbidden spell, they were very clear that the knight on a golden pedestal was in a weakened state. The more he was like this, the more they couldn't give the demons any chance to take advantage of him. Of course, looking at it now, the demons really didn't have the strength to mount a sneak attack. When the rain of light ended, the dark red light barrier released by the 7 demon gods was already very dim. Although the demon god pillars were powerful, their main function was to strengthen the demon gods themselves. This kind of large-scale defense consumed a lot of magic power. They weren't fighting against Long Houchen, but heaven's might. The Star King floated to the ground and folded his wings. The first thing he did was to turn his head to look at Long Houchen on his back. His clear big eyes were filled with reverence and gentleness. "Master, thank you." The Star King called him Master wholeheartedly. He followed Long Houchen because of Long Houchen's identity as the Son of Light, not because he approved of Long Houchen himself. It was only because Long Houchen's pure light attribute would bring great benefits to him. Moreover, he could feel Long Houchen's kindness. After following Long Houchen back to the dragon-resisting pass, the Star King wasn't in a good mood. What he saw was the Son of Light killing. Although the ones he was killing were demons, his hands were still stained with blood. But during this period of time, the Star King was truly subdued by Long Houchen. He was Long Houchen's mount, so when he cast the divine rain, it was undoubtedly the clearest and strongest feeling, including all the emotional changes of Long Houchen. When Long Houchen cast this magic, he didn't consider the state of his body at all. His kindness deeply moved the Star King, the kindest light demon beast. Soon after, under the influence of the divine rain, the Star King also felt it the most. Xingyu felt that realm, and so did the Star King. And to him, that realm belonged to the Holy Unicorn. If one looked closely, they would discover that the roots of the white fur on the Star King's body already had a faint golden color. This was a sign that he had begun to evolve into a holy unicorn. He believed that as long as he followed Long Houchen, it wouldn't take long for him to succeed in his evolution. Long Houchen jumped down from the Star King's back. At this moment, the spiritual power in his body, including the spiritual power stored in the golden foundation armor, could be said to be exhausted. However, he surprisingly didn't feel weak at all. Right now, he was more like an ordinary person with strong spiritual power. Moreover, the spiritual power he had consumed was quietly recovering. He didn't need to do anything. The light elements from the outside world would automatically enter his body. Moreover, the light elements that dared to enter him were all of the purest kind. It seemed that the light elements with impurities were too embarrassed to come close to him. This saved Long Houchen from having to filter the light elements when he absorbed them. There were a total of 11 people from the Assassin Temple surrounding Long Houchen, including Xingyu. Other than Xingyu, the others were wrapped in black clothes, including their heads. Their bodies, without exception, emitted a magnificent aura. Chapter 185. Just like the Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, the 11 powerhouses of the Assassin Temple were all ninth-step chivalrous assassins. They were also the core strength of the Assassin Temple. Acting Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, Jingji No. 12 greets seniors. Please forgive me, seniors. Because of some special reasons, I can't say my name. Long Houchen respectfully saluted the knight. Including Xingyu, the 11 chivalrous assassins returned his salute at the same time. Moreover, it was the most honorable Assassin Temple salute. Xingyu sincerely said, "Welcome, powerful Holy Knight Long Houchen. The Assassin Temple will never forget everything you've brought to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The friendship between our two temples will last forever. If you need any help in the future, the Assassin Temple will never shrink back." Xingyu's words were very serious. Even Yang Haohan hadn't received such a promise from him. The meaning of his words was very simple. From now on, as long as Long Houchen needed help, the Assassin Temple would do its best to help him. And to be able to obtain this degree of recognition from Xingyu, it was because Long Houchen's divine reign came at the right time. There were many injured people in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Not only were they suffering from physical pain, their hearts were also suffering. Moreover, under the continuous siege of the demon army, the Exorcist Mountain Pass was always shrouded in a layer of dusky color. The divine rain's descent washed away the soldiers' fatigue, rekindled their confidence, healed a large number of injured people, and even brought life back to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. It could be said that this powerful forbidden spell had greatly reversed the unfavorable situation the Exorcist Mountain Pass was currently facing. If it was said that Xingyu originally believed that the Exorcist Mountain Pass could at most resist for a month, then now, he had the confidence to fight against the demons for another year. Moreover, in Xingyu's eyes, The most important thing about the divine sweet rain was not its healing effect, but its healing effect on the soul, sweeping away the haze in the hearts of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. That was why Xing Yu made such a solemn promise. With this promise, the Assassin Temple would at least do one thing for Long Haochen unconditionally. This was 1/6 of the Temple League's strength. Long Haochen was slightly stunned, but he did not refuse. Once again, he gave Xing Yu a knight's salute. The reason why he did not refuse was somewhat complicated. To put it simply, it was because of some internal problems of the Temple League. Anyone could see that if the 6 professions of the 6 Great Temple could be perfectly combined, with each stronghold having 6 professions equally distributed, the power to resist the demons would become even stronger. But why was it that they had never been able to achieve this? In the history of the Temple League, it was unknown how many predecessors had tried to promote such a change, but in the end they had all failed. This was because of the self-protection of the 6 Great Temple. This was something that couldn't be helped. If the 6 Great Temple were to combine, then what would happen to the accumulated resources of each temple? Manpower, resources, everything needed to be coordinated. Although the 6 Great Temple didn't represent the 6 countries of the Temple League. But in fact, each temple was highly autonomous. The Monster Hunter's attempt had already informed the 6 Great Temple of the benefits and effects of combining professions. But until today, the 6 Great Temple were still doing things their own way, each with their own territory, each with their own strongholds. Regarding this matter, Long Tianyin had specially explained it to Long Haochen for half a day. Among the 6 professions, the Temple of the Priests advocated the most. The reason was naturally because the priests' ability to protect themselves was too weak. Apart from the Temple of the Priests, almost all the other 5 Great Temple were against it. The Knights Templars' voice was relatively small. The fiercest were the Assassin Temple, Magic Temple, and Soul Temple. Although after the start of the Holy War, the Temple League had tried their best to adjust the composition of professions among the 6 Great Temple, in fact, the 6 Great Temple still used their own strength to resist the demons. Long Tianyin clearly told Long Haochen that at least for now, this problem couldn't be solved. But it didn't mean that it couldn't be solved forever. If they wanted the 6 Great Temple to truly combine, then there was only one situation that could be achieved, and that was to let the humans have a country, a powerful empire with high centralization of power. Only in this way could the 6 Great Temple be separated from each other. Realize the full integration of strength. Of course, to establish such a country, one could imagine how difficult it was. It was almost impossible to unify the opinions of the 6 Great Temple. In the end, Long Tianyin told Long Haochen that if one day he could grow strong enough and establish a strong enough influence in the alliance, then he would have the chance to accomplish this feat. This was also what the Knights Templars wanted to see the most. This was also the reason why Long Tianyin decided to let him go to each temple separately. It wasn't that he wanted him to fight for the support of these temples, but he wanted him to understand the 6 Great Temple. Long Haochen didn't want to be an emperor, but he knew the importance of the integration of the 6 Great Temples' power for the humans. This holy war had greatly damaged the alliance. Although the demons had consumed a lot of energy, all the integration was in the hands of the demon emperor alone. Their reproduction speed was also quite terrifying. If the current situation continued, then the humans would continue to be suppressed by the demons. Being able to stay in a corner was already the best situation. Therefore, Long Haochen didn't reject Xing Yu's promise. Perhaps in a special time this promise would play an extremely important role. Long Tianyin carefully analyzed the current situation of the 6 Great Temple for Long Haochen. The Knights Templars were the strongest, this was without a doubt, and the closest to the Knights Templars was the Assassin Temple. The Magic Temple and the Warrior Temple had a better relationship. These 2 forces were also the largest in the alliance. The Temple of the Priests and the Temple of the Soul were relatively independent. Therefore, if they really wanted to unify the entire alliance in the future and centralize power, then they would first have to strengthen their allies and obtain the support of the Assassin Temple. Then, they would influence the other 4 temples. It was still a bit early to say this, but Long Tianyin told Long Haochen that he must prepare for a rainy day. This wasn't some conspiracy, but for the humans to finally defeat the demons. The power of an individual would always be insignificant. Even if Long Haochen could obtain the recognition of the eternal and creator throne of God, could he rely on the power of one person to fight against the entire demons? The answer was obviously no. He needed the support of the entire alliance, and he also needed the power to command the entire alliance in order to have the possibility of launching a counterattack. This, as the leader of the Temple Alliance, Yang Haohen couldn't achieve. Long Tianyin couldn't do it, but Long Haochen had a chance. His identity as the Son of Light and God's favored had given him enough power to rally supporters. Moreover, there was also the Temple of the Priests that supported the alliance. Just as Long Haochen returned the salute to Xing Yu and the other chivalrous heroes and recalled his grandfather's sincere words, suddenly, a figure squeezed through the crowd, and the chivalrous heroes didn't stop her. Like a young swallow throwing itself into his arms, the figure directly crashed into Long Haochen's arms and gave him a big hug. Seeing this person, all the chivalrous heroes present were stunned. At first, Xing Yu was shocked, then his gaze became strange. He finally knew who this holy knight of the Knights Templars who created miracles looked like. He knew his great-granddaughter too well. Other than that kid, who else could make her so emotional and take the initiative to throw herself into his arms? Even after losing her memory, it was impossible for his precious great-granddaughter to fall in love with someone else. However, after figuring out who this knight on a golden pedestal was, Xing Yu was even more shocked and shocked. For more than a year and a half, he had been teaching Kaer with all his might, and Kaer didn't let him down. She grew at a shocking speed, and now her cultivation base was as high as level 7 and level 6. In Xing Yu's opinion, with this level of cultivation speed, she should have already caught up with that kid. He couldn't help but feel proud for a long time. However, the truth was so cruel. When this little fellow appeared in front of him again, she had become a level 8 knight, and a level 8 knight with an epic level adamantine base armor. Did the Knights Templars give him favoritism? Although Xing Yu was more than 100 years old, his brain was not at the level of being stupid. Favoritism? That spell just now was enough to prove everything. Even if he secretly took out a scroll to cast that forbidden spell, without sufficient strength, it would be impossible to unleash its power. Moreover, he heard the entire process of Long Haochen chanting the spell with his own ears. This little fellow couldn't have already reached level 9, right? This was the question that troubled Xing Yu at the moment. However, his mood became better amidst this shock. He had no choice but to make the promise just now. In his heart, he actually didn't want to owe such a big favor to the Knights Templars. However, it was different now. The Assassin Temple owed a favor to his great-grandson-in-law. After all, they were on the same side. However, the other heroes didn't know what was going on. Of course, they knew the identity of Kaer. She was the reincarnation saint, a rare talent of the Assassin Temple. In the future, the absolute heir of the Assassin Temple, the strongest person. Previously, when Kaer escaped from the demon god with her level 7 strength, she had once again proven her strength to the powerhouses of the Assassin Temple. Moreover, in the eyes of these chivalrous men, although Kaer was a junior, her coldness was something that no one could approach. This was also a necessary quality for an assassin. However, at this moment, she actually threw herself into the arms of the knight. Even their reincarnation saint couldn't resist the charm of this knight? How was this possible? However, these heroes were also experienced people who had roamed the mainland for many years. They clearly saw the gratified smile on Xing Yu's face after the shock. Since the temple master thought that this was normal, then it must be normal. Therefore, they simply didn't think about it anymore. She had just helped the assassin temple, so they couldn't just go and pull Kaer away. The golden foundation battle armor didn't isolate the softness of Kaer's delicate body. Hugging her, the Saint Knight who could cast a forbidden spell and help hero Xing Yu kill the flaming demon lion and Luoxian trembled. Kaer, Kaer. Long Houchen softly called out her name, his voice also trembling. His unstable emotions even caused the orange radiance emitted by the golden foundation battle armor to fluctuate irregularly. Cough, cough. Xing Yu coughed. Saint Knight, you just cast a forbidden spell. Why don't you first rest in our assassin temple? He was reminding the young couple in front of him that they were at the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, where everyone was watching. In fact, Xing Lingxin's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets when he saw the strongest person in the second layer of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Seeing his daughter throw herself into his arms, he almost fell from the second layer of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. He never would have thought that the person was Long Houchen. But in his heart, Long Houchen was his son-in-law. Moreover, he subconsciously thought that a knight on a golden pedestal should be at least 50 years old. What's wrong with Kaer? Does she also worship a hero? But, as the military chief of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, besides glaring, he couldn't do anything else. Fortunately, Kaer's mother Lan Yenyu was still resting at home because she was injured. Otherwise, the husband and wife would have to witness this embarrassment, Xing Lingxin inwardly thought. Kaer, Kaer, don't fall in love with someone else. Otherwise, how can I explain to Brother Long, how can I explain to Houchen? However, this acting Saint Knight was really powerful. Why haven't I heard of him before? Did Kaer and Long Houchen separate because of Xing Yu's reminder? The answer was no. What made Xing Yu and the other heroes not know whether to laugh or cry was that Kaer's body disappeared. Invisibility. An assassin's powerful skill. However, this time, it was used for intimacy between a man and a woman. Kaer's body seemed to have disappeared, but the touch was still there. How could Long Houchen be willing to let go of her? Just like that, he embraced her. Under the fanatical gazes of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, Long Houchen and Star King left the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Assassin's Temple. It's really you, you stinking brat. When Xing Yu saw Long Houchen take off his gold foundation battle armor, he still didn't dare to believe it. This quiet room was where Xing Yu usually cultivated, so naturally, no one would disturb him. After returning to the Assassin's Temple, Xing Yu directly brought Long Houchen and Kaer back to his quiet room. At this time, Kaer was nestled beside Long Houchen. Compared to when they separated a year and a half ago, she had developed an incomparably strong attachment to Long Houchen. Although she hadn't recovered her memories, she had already completely faced up to the feelings between her and Long Houchen. Long Houchen was about to kneel and pay his respects to Xing Yu. Here, he was Kaer's lover, and Xing Yu was an elder, so he deserved to pay his respects. Outside, he represented the Knights Templars, but at this time, in this quiet room, he only represented himself. All right, you're already the Saint Knight Long, so you don't need to pay your respects. How did you cultivate? Could it be that Yang Haohan and Long Tianyin used the great wisdom infusion technique on you? Otherwise, how could you cultivate so quickly? Looking at Long Houchen, even with Xing Yu's strict temperament, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. How old was this child? He hadn't even turned 20 yet. However, he had already become a true knight of the 8th grade. No wonder the Demon Emperor would use him as an excuse to start this holy war. Even if he didn't have the ability to destroy the demon's god pillars, with his growth rate, he would definitely become a mainstay against the demons in the future. Long Houchen said respectfully, "A great-grandfather, I meditated for a period of time, and then practiced my skills for half a year." Xing Yu helplessly said to Kaer, "See, you still can't compare to him. Looks like he's worked much harder than you." The boredom of deep meditation wasn't something that everyone could endure. Kid, don't tell me you meditated for a year straight away. Ha. This chivalrous master laughed, but he didn't laugh for long before he stopped because of Long Houchen's serious nod. Ah? You really meditated for a year? You? The wrinkles on Xing Yu's thin face twitched. Alright, you two can talk. I'm not going to be stimulated here. Saying that, he waved his hand, stepped out, and directly disappeared from the room. Kaer giggled. A great-grandfather is jealous. Looking at the smile on her face, Long Houchen's eyes flashed a faint sense of loss. He knew Kaer too well. Because of this, from Kaer's expression, he could tell that her memory hadn't recovered. She was still the Kaer who had amnesia. Kaer immediately felt the change in his mood, slightly bowed her head. I'm sorry, Before she could finish, Long Houchen had already embraced her and said softly, No, the one who should say sorry is me. I didn't protect you well. In any case, it's really good to see you again. Kaer tightly hugged him, softly saying, I don't know how I felt when I liked you in the past, but I can already be sure that I still like you now. That day, when you left, I felt as if I lost something important. You've already done enough for me. This time, seeing you again, I've already thought it through. Wherever you go, I'll go. I'll definitely be able to convince a great-grandfather. I don't want to see your back as you leave again. Long Houchen gently stroked her long hair. Don't worry, this time I'll not only bring you away, but we'll also join up with other comrades to rebuild our Commander Grade 64. Kaer raised her head in astonishment, saying, The Alliance allowed it? Long Houchen faintly smiled, saying, It's equivalent to tacitly agreeing. However, we must leave enough merit points in every stronghold. I think it should be enough in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. If it's not enough, we can stay for a while longer. It definitely won't be enough. At this time, a light flashed and Xing Yu returned. When Kaer saw a great-grandfather, she hurriedly released her arms around Long Houchen, her charming face thoroughly red, angrily saying, A great-grandfather, why did you come back? This wasn't the time when she first saw Long Houchen, so how could she not be embarrassed? Xing Yu angrily said, I had no choice but to come back. Just as I left, I thought, a man and a woman alone in the same room. Moreover, it's been a long time since you've seen each other. If you get excited and do something, won't I have to hold my great-great-grandson in advance? That won't do. Xing Yu's great-granddaughter. How can I have a child only after I'm officially married? A great-grandfather, what are you saying? Kaer's charming face was as red as a ripe apple. In a flash, she arrived at Xing Yu's side, grabbing his beard and pulling it. Good, don't pull, I only have a few. You, a great-grandfather, still need to rely on them to maintain my image. Silly girl, I'm doing this for your own good. Isn't a great-grandfather afraid that he'll bully you? This time, it was Long Houchen's turn to be astonished. Apart from himself, this was the first time he saw Kaer being so close to someone else. Even if it was a great-grandfather, he still clearly remembered that before she lost her memory, Kaer rejected a great-grandfather. At this moment, looking at the deep familial love between grandfather and grandson, Long Houchen suddenly felt that he was too selfish. Wasn't the current Kaer also very good? At the very least, she didn't have that haze in her heart from before, and even gained familial love. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but reveal a knowing smile on his face. That's right. If you love her, you should think for her sake, and not only think of yourself. The ill feelings caused by Kaer's memory loss finally began to melt in his heart. Standing to the side, he only smiled without saying a word. Stinking brat, what are you smiling about? Let me tell you, if you don't stay here for 3 months, don't even think about leaving. I've already received that brat Long Tianin's letter. 1 million merit points, don't even think about leaving with less. Come, let me first test your current merit point. Looking at Xing Yu's crafty expression, Long Houchen immediately made a bitter face. A great-grandfather, you can't be serious, right? 3 months is too long. Xingyu snorted. Long? I still think it's too short. If you can accumulate 1,000,000 merit points in 3 months, I'll consider you capable. Long Haochen said helplessly, but, a great-grandfather, this isn't fair. You promised me today that you would help me. Is this considered helping me? Xingyu said somewhat proudly, that's right, I promised you. But do you intend to use this promise now? Don't think I don't know what Long Tianyin and Yang Haohan are thinking. If you use this promise now, you won't be able to use it in the future. You better think carefully. Long Haochen cursed inwardly, but there was nothing he could do. Xingyu snorted. Are you trying to say that I'm a wily old fox? Long Haochen smiled bitterly and shook his head. I wouldn't dare. You're an elder. I just want to say that ginger is spicier with age. You're amazing. However, I don't need your promise. You can't go back on your word about the merit points I owe you. No matter how you look at it, I deserve half of the credit for killing the flaming demon lion Unluoxian. The flaming demon lion is a 9th-rank demon god. He should have at least 500,000 merit points, maybe even more. I'll have to trouble you to check and split half with me. Oh, and the corpse is another matter. The flaming demon lion's demon god crown demonic crystal should be worth at least 300,000 merit points. If I remember correctly, you've already given it to me. Remember to give it to me. Xingyu's eyes widened as he looked at Long Haochen. Brat, when did you become so crafty? No, I'm a little worried about handing my granddaughter to you. With this trump card, Long Haochen immediately became well-behaved. He smiled bitterly and said, A great-grandfather, you can't do this. Xingyu proudly said, What? Is it difficult for you to stay in the Exorcist Mountain Pass to accompany Kai? Speaking up to here, he glanced at his great-granddaughter in front of him, and his gaze softened. For more than a year, it had always been Xingyu teaching Kai, and he liked this great-granddaughter of his more and more. Without the previous estrangement, Kai also became more and more attached to him, and a true grand-granddaughter relationship was born. This was something Xingyu had never thought about before. Although he seemed to be making things difficult for Long Haochen, in fact, he really couldn't bear to let his great-granddaughter leave. Although he also knew that a grown girl couldn't be kept at home, even if it was just one more day, it would still be good. Xingyu's gaze was Long Haochen very clearly. He originally intended to argue, but he immediately changed his words. A great-grandfather, how about this? Our time is indeed very tight. Moreover, after today's battle, the situation in the Exorcist Mountain Pass should be relatively stable. Let's stay here for a month. In this month, I don't need any contribution points. I will definitely do my best to help the Exorcist Mountain Pass deal with the demons. What do you think? Long Haochen spoke very sincerely, and Xingyu's previous mood also converged. He lightly nodded and said, I knew I couldn't keep you. In fact, everything you did for the Exorcist Mountain Pass today is already worth 1,000,000 contribution points. In fact, this was also the case. The divine protection practically increased the fighting strength of the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass by more than a third, and this was still a conservative estimate. Not only that, it also greatly weakened the demons. Xingyu said, Let's go, you two follow me out. Staying here is too unsafe. Go to a public place, at least it can guarantee my great-granddaughter's safety. Kai suddenly stamped her feet and coquettishly said, A great-grandfather, why did you come again? Hateful, hateful. However, the two still followed Xingyu and left the quiet room. Xingyu ordered people to arrange a place for Long Haochen to live together with Han Yu. Very clearly, he was a bit on guard against Long Haochen and Kai having an overly intimate relationship. In the next few days, the demons outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass were strangely calm. The demons seemed to have laid down their banners and laid down their drums. Among the 8 demon god pillars, apart from the flaming lion demon god pillar that had already lost its master, the other 7 were always flickering with light, as if they were guarding against human attacks. But in fact, the demons being so on guard against the Exorcist Mountain Pass was very reasonable. Long Houchen's large-scale forbidden spell had scared them to death. What they were most afraid of was that Long Houchen would do such a thing when they were attacking. At that time, the 7 great demon gods wouldn't have the ability to protect the entire army. Of course, they didn't know that for Long Houchen, the divine protection was just a one-time deal. If they wanted him to repeat it again, perhaps they would have to wait until his spiritual energy exceeded 200,000 before it would be possible. Grandfather, the situation inside the pass is currently good. I have already organized people to begin repairing the walls. It is rare for the demons to be so calm. With this buffer time, our Exorcist Mountain Pass's defensive power can be restored by at least 30%. After Sheng Yu, Sheng Lingxin and his wife, as well as Long Houchen, Han Yu, and Kai Er ate dinner together, Sheng Lingxin reported the situation of the Exorcist Mountain Pass to Sheng Yu. Now, the husband and wife already knew that the knight on a golden pedestal was Long Houchen. In order to conceal his true identity, Long Houchen wore the golden pedestal armor every day, not revealing his true appearance. While Sheng Lingxin was talking to Sheng Yu, his gaze would from time to time drift towards his future son-in-law. When he knew that the knight on a golden pedestal was Long Houchen, that inconceivable feeling lasted for several hours without disappearing. How long had it been? At that time, when Long Houchen led his monster hunters to the Exorcist Mountain Pass to carry out the trial mission, he was still so weak and small, and needed his protection to fight. But now, his cultivation had clearly surpassed him. Although Sheng Lingxin had finally broken through to the 8th step, the age gap was still an entire generation. Sheng Lingxin was also a proud and arrogant person, and he wholeheartedly accepted Long Xingwu, but he didn't expect that even Long Houchen's cultivation had already surpassed him. Sheng Yu faintly nodded and said, "How's the reorganization of the army?" Sheng Lingxin said, "The situation is very good. The originally lightly injured have all returned, and the heavily injured have basically all become lightly injured. Apart from the disabled, the majority of the soldiers have already returned to their original positions. Continue to recuperate while preparing for battle." Xing Yu nodded and said, "Those whose injuries haven't completely healed, don't let them participate in reinforcing the city's defenses." "Yes," Sheng Lingxin hastily replied. Although he was the military chief of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the one truly in charge of the Exorcist Mountain Pass was Sheng Yu. With Sheng Lingxin's prestige, it was far from enough to mobilize those heroes of the 9th step. Even if it was the hidden chivalry hall formed of assassins of the 8th step, he wouldn't be able to mobilize them. They needed Ing Suifeng to personally lead them. Xing Yu's gaze turned to Long Houchen, and his face revealed a trace of a smile, and said, "Our Saint Knight, do you have any good suggestions?" Long Houchen smiled bitterly and said, "A great-grandfather, you're teasing me again. In front of you and Uncle Sheng, how could I have the right to speak?" Xing Yu's complexion changed, and he said, "Houchen, what you said is wrong. In private, you are our junior. However, no matter when, you must not forget your identity as the Saint Knight Commander. You represent the Knights Templars, and in many cases, being unyielding is necessary. Otherwise, you won't just lose your own face, but the face of the Knights Templars, do you understand?" Long Houchen's heart shivered, and he respectfully said, "Yes." Xing Yu said in a deep voice, "Although you are still young, your contribution to the alliance isn't small at all. Forget your own age, you must bring yourself into the identity of the Saint Knight Commander as soon as possible. Otherwise, the reason why your grandfather asked you to go to the various temples to establish connections will be useless. You are already strong enough. What you need now is the dignity and strength that the Saint Knight Commander should have. Do you understand?" Long Houchen nodded again. Xing Yu sighed and said, "If possible, I don't want you to shoulder such a heavy burden so early. However, you have already started it and you can't let it go. It can be said that you are the fuse of this holy war. Although the holy war will happen sooner or later, the Alliance can protect you, not because you are my great-grandson-in-law, nor because you are Long Tianin's grandson. It is because of your own strength, because you have the ability to destroy the demon god pillars. What I said is very direct, even unreasonable, and unpleasant to hear. However, this is the most fundamental truth. If it wasn't for your own strength, even if the final result is the same, who knows how many twists and turns you will have to go through in the middle, and you won't be able to pass it so smoothly in one go. So, you must work hard. You are already an 8th Order Saint Knight, and there is no other Saint Knight at your age in the history of the Alliance. We all believe that in the future, you will become the leader of the generation, and the true leader of the Alliance. So, no matter when, you must use the strictest method to control yourself. I don't want to hear what you said just now again. Okay, tell me what you think. Xing Yu's words were very strict, but his words had undoubtedly enlightened Long Haochen. By doing this, he was helping Long Haochen to change his own judgment. He was no longer a lone knight, but a Saint Knight commander representing the Knights Templars. In the entire Temple Alliance, he was one of the top figures. Long Haochen was silent for a moment, then said, "A great-grandfather, Uncle Xing. I have an idea, but because it is a bit radical, I didn't say it." Xing Lingxin's eyes brightened. "Let's hear it." In terms of governance, he was the representative of the radical faction of the Assassin Temple. If it wasn't because of Xing Yu's suppression, perhaps his direction of command would have already changed. When Long Haochen said the word radical, it immediately aroused his father-in-law's interest. Long Haochen nodded and said, "I feel that the Exorcist Mountain Pass loss is so big, besides the disparity in strength, the most important point is that the Assassin Temple's superiority wasn't displayed." After saying this, he paused and looked at Xing Yu and Xing Lingxin's reaction. Xing Yu stared blankly, while Xing Lingxin's eyes brightened even more, slightly nodding his head. "Go on." Long Haochen said, "The Assassin Temple's superiority lies in attack and not defense. The assassins defending the city walls are completely using sledgehammers to crack a nut. It's like letting a group of magicians charge into the battlefield. The Exorcist Mountain Pass admittedly needs defense, but I think we can change from passive defense to active defense. And offense is the best defense. That day I also saw that in our Exorcist Mountain Pass, there are more than 10 senior chivalrous assassins. With this kind of strength, even if we face the 8 great demon gods head-on, we won't suffer too much, let alone now that we have one less demon god. If we can harass and kill to destroy the demon camp, then when they attack our Exorcist Mountain Pass, their strength will be greatly reduced. At the same time, killing, sneak attacks, and hiding, these are what assassins are good at. Why don't we display all of these advantages? Blindly passively taking a beating will only make us more and more passive. Different professions should use different methods to deal with the enemy. Well said. Xing Lingxin slapped his thigh and excitedly said, "Haochen, you and I are thinking the same thing." Humph. Xing Yu angrily snorted at the side, interrupting Xing Lingxin's excitement. Xing Lingxin somewhat awkwardly turned to look at his grandfather and bitterly smiled. "Grandfather, I'm not saying that your strategy is wrong." Chapter 186. Xing Yu snorted coldly and said, "Do you think I don't know what kind of person you are? Do you know why I don't support you in ambushing the demons? Because we can't afford to lose them. It's fine if you succeed, but what if you fail? Do you want the Assassin Temple that I leave for my great-granddaughter to be a pile of ruins?" Xing Lingxin smiled bitterly and said, "But, Grandpa, don't you think what Haochen said makes sense?" Xing Yu said, "The present cannot be compared to the past. It's time to adjust our strategy." At this point, the hero's eyes revealed a strong killing intent. Xing Lingxin was overjoyed. "Grandpa, you agree?" Xing Yu slowly stood up and looked up at the sky. He said indifferently, It's a dark and windy night to kill. It's better to catch the sun than to catch the sun. Let's do it today. Go and pass on my order. Hurry all the heroes and hidden chivalry hall members to gather in the courtyard. Lan Yinyu was shocked and said, Grandpa, isn't this a little too rushed? Let's think it over before taking action. Xing Yu said proudly, an assassin's assassination must be unexpected. A truly powerful assassin would always have a thorough plan, no matter what the situation was. There are no unchanging situations, only assassins who don't know how to adapt. If these old brothers of mine still need to prepare for an assassination mission, then they are not worthy of being the leaders of the Assassin Temple. You and your wife will mobilize the troops and make preparations to defend against the enemy's retaliation. Haochen, Yu, Han Yu, and Kair will assist them. Long Haochen stood up and said, A great-grandfather, let me go with you. I think the seniors also need a shield. Han Yu and Kair both stood up at this moment, looking at Xing Yu with resolute gazes, expressing their feelings. Xing Yu thought for a moment and said, All right, let's go together. Lan Yinyu still wanted to say something, but she was stopped by Xing Lingxin's gaze. How could she let her emotions affect her decisions? Long Haochen and Kair were not flowers growing in a greenhouse. Xing Yu raised his head and looked at the dark night sky. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Vaguely, Long Haochen could feel that there was an invisible aura around Xing Yu that was continuously strengthening. It wasn't pressure, but a strange quality that made Long Haochen's hair stand on end. Not long after, black figures appeared in front of Xing Yu. Other than the other 10 rank 9 heroes that Long Haochen had met the other day, there were also 21 hidden hero assassins. They were all rank 8 Emperor assassins. Xing Yu turned to Long Haochen, Kair and Han Yu. After thinking for a moment, he said, Han Yu, you don't need to go. Stay in the Exorcist Mountain Pass and protect the city with Lingxin. This raid focuses on speed. Your cultivation is slightly low, and speed isn't your specialty. Although Han Yu wanted to fight alongside Long Haochen and Kair, he knew that what Xing Yu said was the truth. He agreed and unwillingly retreated to the side. Xing Yu looked at Long Haochen's dazzling golden foundation battle armor. Without waiting for him to speak, Long Haochen took out a large black cloak and covered his body. The distortion of spiritual fluctuations instantly caused his aura to completely disappear. A smile appeared on Xing Yu's face. He thought to himself, this stinky brat must have done many sneaky things. 11 heroes, 21 hidden hero assassins, plus Long Haochen and Kair, a total of 34 people. Xing Yu said in a deep voice, the demons have been attacking our Exorcist Mountain Pass for so long. It's time to show them some power. This time, we will carry out a surprise attack. There is only one goal, and that is to kill as many high-level demons as possible. I emphasize 2 points. First, no one is allowed to continue fighting. Once you hear my order to retreat, you must immediately retreat. Heroic assassins are responsible for bringing up the rear. Second, do not attempt to kill the demon gods. They are guarding the demon god pillars and are very difficult to kill. Our target is those demons that are above the 5th step. Moreover, we are assassins. This is a surprise attack, not a forceful attack. During the operation, all of you must hide well. I won't say anything else. Let's go. With a wave of his hand, Xing Yu's figure flashed. He took the lead and flew out. The other assassins were like phantoms, quietly disappearing behind him. Long Haochen and Kair flew out at the same time. Before leaving, he said something to Lan Yinyu in a low voice. Then, he pulled Kair's hand and followed them out. Looking at their departing figures, Lan Yinyu sighed. Haochen is really a good child. Xing Lingxin said, What did he say to you just now? Lan Yinyu said, He said that if anyone wants to harm Kair, they must first step over his corpse. Xing Lingxin smiled and said, You are a mother-in-law looking at a son-in-law. The more you look, the more you like him, right? Lan Yinyu rolled her eyes at him and said, This son-in-law was not chosen by me. Your daughter made the decision herself. The two of them lived together when they were only 14 years old. What else can I say? Cough cough. Let's go. We should also go to the top of the wall. I have already ordered the army to assemble. I really want to go with grandfather and the others. What a pity. With Xing Lingxin's cultivation, his family's teachings and his spiritual stove of returning to childhood, becoming a heroic hidden assassin was not a problem. Unfortunately, he was the military chief of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. How could he leave his post without permission? Han Yu listened to Xing Lingxin's words and repeatedly nodded. He also wanted to go. Although their commander-class Monster Hunt 64 hadn't assembled yet, he was already somewhat impatient to fight together with Long Haochen and Kair. The distant demon camp was very quiet. The 7 originally shining demon god pillars had also dimmed a lot. After Xing Yu quietly brought everyone out of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, they gathered in a dark corner outside the city and arranged the mission. In a moment, everyone scatter and fight separately. Listen for my signal to withdraw. Do you all understand? You all remember, our sneak attack this time's principle is to kill the enemy as much as possible while protecting ourselves. As long as you are all alive after the mission is over, it will be a great merit. This group of powerful assassins used their own method to express their determination to Xing Yu. Every one of them raised their right hand and pointed at the space between their eyebrows, then made a throat-slitting gesture. This was an assassin's unique method. When moving, they often couldn't use words to communicate. Hand gestures and movements became the most important way to communicate with each other. This action just now meant that they would use their brains to fight with the enemy, to kill the enemy. Xing Yu once again turned to Long Haochen, looked at him, then looked at Kair. Long Haochen immediately nodded to him, expressing that he understood. Xing Yu was reminding him to protect Kair and himself. Xing Yu waved his hand, and everyone immediately moved. They quietly scattered in all directions, then all of them disappeared into the darkness of the night. Just as Long Haochen had said, assassins were best at ambushing and assassinating, not fighting openly. The assassins who entered the night were like fish back in the water. The same carefree feeling appeared in the hearts of these powerful assassins almost at the same time. As for how far they could go in this mission, no one thought about it. All they thought about was venting and killing. Kair, go invisible and follow me, Long Haochen said in a low voice. Okay. Kair agreed. Her figure flashed and disappeared into the air next to Long Haochen. With Long Haochen's spiritual power, if he didn't concentrate in one direction, he wouldn't be able to detect her presence. Compared to a year and a half ago, Kair was indeed much stronger. Long Haochen's speed was already slower than the powerful assassins from the Assassin's Temple, but he didn't seem to be in a hurry at all. He took a detour to the side, not rushing to the demon's camp in the shortest distance. Long Haochen, where are we going? Aren't we going to ambush the demon's camp? It's too slow to go around like this. Although a great-grandfather and the others shouldn't be able to find out in a short time, if we fall too far behind, I'm afraid we won't get anything. Kair wasn't anxious because she wanted to kill the enemy, but because she was anxious for Long Haochen. He was the only one from the Knights Templars on this mission. If his harvest was too bad, wouldn't he, the Holy Knight, be criticized? Especially when he had shown his great strength before. Long Haochen said in a low voice, "Don't say anything, just follow me. We'll do our best to make it big." The demon's camp still didn't know that a massacre had begun against them. Almost all the powerful assassins from the Assassin's Temple had been mobilized for a surprise attack. The demons outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass were very different from those outside the Dragon-Resisting Mountain Pass. Outside the Dragon-Resisting Mountain Pass were almost all elite demons, including the 3 Emperor's Legion. From this, it could be seen that the overall strength of the Knights Templars was indeed far superior to that of the Assassin's Temple. In the face of so many elite demons, their losses were much smaller than that of the Assassin's Temple. The number of demons stationed outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass far exceeded that of the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass, especially the huge number of dual-bladed demons. Although these low-level demons had limited fighting strength, and in a one-on-one situation, they couldn't even beat an adult man after training, but there were many of them. Therefore, in the demon camp, the periphery was also filled with these low-level dual-bladed demons. Dual-bladed demons had a very low status among the demons. Even when they ate corpses, no other demons were willing to eat their corpses, so they could only devour themselves. Tents were luxurious ornaments for the demon's army. Not to mention ordinary dual-bladed demons, even rank 5 dark green dual-bladed demons might not be able to enjoy them. The best tents were all transferred to the north, to be used by the demon's army in the dragon-resisting Mountain Pass. The demons outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass had to be at least rank 6 to be qualified to live in tent. This was also the reason why when Xing Yu said that the attack this time was mainly aimed at rank 5 and rank 6 demons, no assassin had mentioned how to look for them. As long as they lived in tents, they definitely wouldn't be bad. Large swaths of the dual-bladed demons were like skeletons inserted into the ground, quietly lying on the ground and resting. They didn't sense that above their heads, a formless figure was quietly passing by. At this time, Xing Yu had some doubts in his heart. He was wondering what Long Haochen had gone to do. Originally, he had planned to quietly follow Long Haochen and Kair, so as to better protect them. However, when he had just announced the start of the operation, Long Haochen had unexpectedly left with Kair to the side. As the commander of this operation, Xing Yu naturally couldn't follow them to take a detour. He needed to be responsible for all the experts of the Assassin Temple. Helpless, he could only follow the assassins and quietly scatter, rushing into the demon's camp. Just like the surprise attack of the Knights Templars on the demon army, the demon's camp was practically defenseless. Although the power of the 7 great demonic god pillars was restrained, they still had extremely strong probing abilities. Furthermore, there was a huge number of dual-blade demons outside. In the eyes of the demons' commanders, if there was an enemy attack, there was no reason they wouldn't discover it. In their eyes, humans were cowardly, and those human experts wouldn't dare to take risks easily. With the demon god pillars by their side, the strength of the demon god pillars would increase by at least 50%. After passing by the dual-bladed demons' camp, there were all kinds of scattered low and mid-level demons, ordinary bird demons, demon-eye warlocks, wolf demons, and so on. Going further, he would enter the core position of the demon camp. Xing Yu identified a relatively large tent and directly broke through space in his invisible state. The demon camp had nearly 1 million demon army stationed there. At its peak, the total number was close to 2 million. Therefore, although the proportion of tents was small, the total number was not small. When attacking, the assassins were scattered, so they weren't afraid of bumping into each other. There were 12 demons living in this tent. At this time, they had already entered Dreamland. There was a slight distortion in the air, and the invisible Xing Yu had already arrived in this tent. At this time, his strength was revealed. He could travel through space and still remain invisible. This was not something that all rank 9 assassins could do. Xing Yu observed the situation in the tent. All 12 demons were sleeping separately. This tent was quite spacious, and they had a certain distance between each other. As an assassin, he had to be cautious when carrying out any action, even if he knew that the opponent was far weaker than him. Once the invisibility ability was launched, it would disappear immediately. Therefore, it wasn't easy to get rid of these enemies who were at least rank 6 without making a sound. The demons in this tent were all wolf demons. However, they were taller than ordinary wolf demons, and their fur was also dark gold. This was a Lord-tier demonic wolf, and its strength varied between the 6th and 7th grade. After thinking for a while, Xing Yu's figure flashed, and he appeared next to the outermost wolf demon. He was very familiar with the characteristics of various demons. Wolf demons had an extremely strong sense of smell, so he must not let his scent leak out. Otherwise, with the strength of these rank 6 and rank 7 wolf demons, they would be able to detect his presence even in their sleep. A faint black light flashed, and the outermost wolf demon's body trembled slightly, and it immediately lost all signs of life. Xing Yu's sword could be said to be steady, accurate, and ruthless. He had pierced through the central nervous system of the wolf demon's nape, and directly into the wolf demon's brain. This kind of injury was enough to kill it in an instant. Moreover, in order to not let this wolf demon make any sound, when his short sword pierced into the wolf demon's body, his spiritual energy instantly spread, locking it in place, and directly causing it to enter a stiff state. Then, the short sword pierced into its brain. This process sounded simple, but in practice, Xing Yu's short sword had to change its spiritual energy at least 3 times. In the world of assassins, this was known as 3 changes in one sword, and was definitely a high-level technique. After launching the attack, Xing Yu's figure naturally appeared, but he seemed to be a part of the darkness. Not only did he not emit any aura, but even if the wolf demon opened its eyes at this moment, it might not be able to see him in the darkness. The short sword was quietly withdrawn, and not a single drop of blood actually dripped. Almost all high-ranking assassins' weapons were laced with poison. This kind of poison was called ash poison. The ash poison itself wasn't fatal, and if it only cut the opponent's skin, it could even help the enemy immediately bind up the wound. This was because this was an extremely tyrannical fire poison, and once it came into contact with the body, it would immediately emit an intense burning ability. When Xing Yu's sword pierced into the wolf demon's body, everywhere it passed, the wolf demon's internal body would become charred. This was also why there was no blood flowing out. It was to hide the fact that it had been killed. With its blood vessels completely blocked, it would take at least 2 hours for the wolf demon to gradually show signs of bleeding from its 7 orifices. The Assassin's Temple studied assassination, and the thousands of years of accumulation wasn't as simple as it seemed. After his successful strike, Xing Yu didn't stop at all. Using the same method, he quickly took care of 8 of the wolf demons in the tent. At this moment, something unexpected happened. One of the wolf demons snorted and actually sat up. It stood up and was about to walk out of the tent. Is he going to pee? Xing Yu's expression immediately became a little strange. This kind of high-ranking wolf demon's perception was quite strong. Perhaps he couldn't sense it because he hadn't woken up from his sleep, but once he went out to pee and was blown by the cold wind, he would definitely be much more awake when he came back. At that time, he would definitely notice that the situation in the tent had changed. How could he not know whether his companions were breathing or not? However, Xing Yu didn't act rashly. He watched as the wolf demon walked out of the tent. Then, he flickered like a black lightning and quickly took care of the remaining 3 sleeping wolf demons. His figure flickered and he hid in the darkness. Not long after, the wolf demon that went out to pee lifted the tent's curtain and came back. Sure enough, its eyes were a little sober. Just as it was walking towards its bed, it suddenly felt that something was wrong and subconsciously looked at its companions. At this time, a blazing feeling suddenly erupted in his mind. The next moment, his world turned pitch black. A cold glint flickered in the depths of Xing Yu's eyes. A black light flashed on his wrist, and he quickly collected the corpses of the 12 wolf demon lords. This was not only to prevent their aura from leaking after death, but also because they were high-ranking demons. Their magic crystals could be directly used in the magic cannons. The magic cannons of the Exorcist Mountain Pass had been silent for a year. If the dozens of magic cannons could be used again, would they still need to be afraid of those hateful demon-eye warlocks? The same massacre occurred almost simultaneously in various parts of the demon's camp. Every assassin had their own assassination method, but without exception, they didn't make any sound. Long Houchen didn't enter the demon's camp with Kai, but instead hid outside the demon camp. He didn't even have the intention to take any action and just quietly stared at the movements inside the demon camp. At this time, he and Kai were on the outskirts of the demon's camp, but they were inside the dual-bladed demons and low-ranking demons. With Long Houchen's cultivation, it wasn't difficult for him to sneak in without making a sound. Although Kai was puzzled as to why Long Houchen didn't make a move, she didn't ask any more questions. This was trust. It wasn't because of the feelings between them, but because they were teammates and comrades in arms. Long Houchen could be said to have outstanding military service in the commander-level Monster Hunt 64. During the continuous operations, all the members had long since been completely convinced by him. Even the amnesiac Kai was the same. Long Houchen was hiding at this time, so he must have a purpose. Quietly sensing everything around him, Long Houchen opened his spiritual force to the maximum. Apart from not probing the demon god pillars, he spread his perception as far as possible. Admiration gradually appeared in his heart. In his perception, none of the assassins in this operation had appeared. In other words, even with his spiritual force, he couldn't sense where the assassins were. Although the demon's camp was very big, Long Houchen's spiritual force was also quite strong, and the range he could explore was also quite wide. In this range, there were powerhouses from the assassin temple taking action, but even he couldn't sense them, which showed how powerful these assassins were. Long Houchen wasn't in a hurry at all. The longer it took, the more the assassins gained. This was a great thing. It was best to keep things calm like this. With the strength of the assassins, they could probably sweep away a tent every minute. In other words, almost every minute, there would be hundreds of demons dying in their hands. Come on. Long Houchen secretly encouraged them in his heart, but he still didn't have any intention of taking action. He didn't even let Kai move. He just looked up from time to time and looked at a demon god pillar that was emitting a greenish-black light not far away. He felt and probed with his spiritual force more seriously. Time passed minute by minute. Among the devil race, no one knew that at this time, an invisible massacre was shrouding them. One tent after another gradually became less and less breathing. Invisible figures shuttled back and forth outside the tent. Then, they slowly penetrated inside. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 minutes had passed. Long Houchen's fists were already clenched, and his excitement was overflowing. In just these 10 minutes, their operation this time was already a big success. Their target was not ordinary demons. At this moment, suddenly, among the 7 shining demon god pillars, the centermost one shone brightly. Then, the other 6 demon god pillars also shone brightly. A mournful long howl suddenly sounded out, immediately alarming the entire fiend race camp. At this time, dozens of lights suddenly burst out in different directions in the demon camp. The nearest light to Long Houchen was less than 200 meters away. We've been discovered. Long Houchen immediately realized the situation at this time. Although he didn't know how the demons discovered the assassins, it was time to retreat. Sure enough, all of the streaks of light that had risen up at the same time throughout the devilish camp erupted with dazzling halos before quickly transforming into streaks of light that silently disappeared into the air. It was clear that they had already entered a state of concealment and were beginning to flee. And under Long Houchen's gaze, the light closest to him and Kai, after rising into the air, instantly burst into unparalleled bright light. A large cloud of gray light instantly shrouded at least 4 or 5 demons' tents. Wherever the gray light passed, the earth seemed to have been bombarded by a meteor. In the violent roar, the several tents all disappeared. Then, the figure immediately submerged into the air and disappeared. Obviously, even if the assassins were discovered, they still wanted to make a profit before leaving. At this time, Long Houchen was not in the mood to pay much attention to this person. Instead, he quickly transmitted his voice to Kai, "Get ready to move. Later, you watch my action." After I fight with the enemy, you get ready to use the Grim Reaper side. I will pretend to retreat in defeat, and you will hide in the direction where I escape. When I fly to your side, I will counterattack. We will attack from the front and back, understand? Understood, Kai immediately agreed. At this time, she had somewhat understood what Long Houchen was going to do. Under the effect of the shrill howl and the dozens of lights that suddenly rose into the air, the entire demon camp had become chaotic at this time. Countless demons rushed out of the camp, and the demons on the periphery also woke up from their shock. Each and every one of them frantically searched for traces of the enemy. However, wanting to find dozens of people in this army of nearly 1,000,000 was easier said than done. Moreover, these peak assassins had already entered stealth mode. Wanting to find them was no different from finding a needle in a haystack. At the core of the demon camp, the 7 demon god pillars burst with resplendent light. The 7 lights instantly fused into one, and then swept towards a direction in the sky. This clearly had a target, and the direction it was aimed at was precisely between the demon's barracks and the Exorcist mountain pass. Sure enough, where this light swept, several figures quietly appeared. They clearly hesitated for a moment, and then rushed towards the Exorcist mountain pass at an even faster speed. One after another, rays of light shot out from the demon camp, chasing towards the sky. At the same time, the 7 demon god pillars each shone with a strong light. 2 of them chased after the figures that appeared in the sky, while the other 5 simultaneously flew towards different directions of the barracks. Their bodies were constantly refracting the light from the demon god pillars, sweeping through the demon camp. Clearly, they were looking for those hidden assassins. Facing this situation, Long Houchen couldn't help but secretly sigh. The demons were really powerful. These 7 demon gods were able to react so quickly. Perhaps this surprise attack would cause some losses to the assassin temple. He just hoped that the losses wouldn't be too great. Originally, he was prepared to wait a little longer, but looking at the situation in front of him, he decided to act ahead of time. Quietly standing up, Long Houchen swept his eyes over the surrounding situation. Divine light flickered in the depths of his eyes, and he suddenly soared up. At the same time, resplendent golden light instantly burst forth, transforming into incomparably dazzling golden radiance that sprinkled in all directions. This was the sword meteor shower. A large expanse of golden light, with a sharp whistling sound and a dense aura of light, ruthlessly bombarded the demon camp. This attack of Long Houchen's wasn't pursuing attack power, but attack range. A large area of the barracks was destroyed by the sword meteor shower. However, the majority of the demons inside had already rushed out of the barracks, and hurriedly resisted Long Houchen's attack with all their strength. After launching this attack, Long Houchen's body slightly paused in the air, and then he turned around and ran. He didn't fly, but instead madly ran on the ground. In his right hand, the golden ripple of light shone brightly, continuously sprinkling tens of thousands of golden lights, directly rushing into the barracks of the middle-level and low-level demons. Wherever Long Houchen passed, the demons were unlucky. Under the attack of his demon destruction flash, how could those rank 4 and rank 5 demons survive? What's more, there was the amplification effect of the ripple of light. What could be seen was a golden figure rushing out of the demon camp at an astonishing speed. Wherever he passed, a large expanse of golden light sprinkled from his body. Every time the light sprinkled, dozens of middle-level and low-level demons would immediately fall. The demon destruction flash had the powerful attack power of the ripple of light. With Long Houchen's current cultivation level, even rank 6 demons might not be able to resist it. Almost every demon in front of Long Houchen was instantly turned into a bloody sieve. In the face of that tyrannical golden light, no one could block Long Houchen for even a moment. Behind him, a large number of demons chased after Long Houchen. However, Long Houchen's speed was really too fast. With his rank 8 cultivation level, even if he ran on the ground, ordinary demons would not be able to catch up to him. This feeling of killing could really be described as carefree. Long Houchen could even feel his merit points skyrocketing at an astonishing speed. Every attack that was sprinkled out was worth at least hundreds of merit points, or even thousands of merit points. From time to time, he would also burst out with a sword star shower, reaping the lives of more demons. Of course, this situation would disappear when he rushed into the double-bladed demon's camp. 10 double-bladed demons were equivalent to 1 merit point. Even if Long Houchen killed more, it would not be much of a reward. Long Houchen was the first person to rush into the demon camp alone to carry out such a massacre. This was because everyone knew that after such an attack, the possibility of escaping was infinitely close to zero. Wasn't this the case at the moment? Among the 5 demon gods that flew in different directions in the camp, the one closest to Long Houchen was a demon god shining with an intense green light. Identifying the direction in which Long Houchen had fled, he instantly accelerated in the air. While Long Houchen was wreaking havoc in the demon camp, he was also chasing after Long Houchen at an astonishing speed. Fortunately, the demons behind him stopped chasing. In their opinion, this human would not be able to escape the demon god's pursuit no matter what. Long Houchen had indeed been fleeing, but he had also been paying attention to the movements behind him. How could he not feel the pressure in the sky that was getting stronger and stronger? However, he acted as if he didn't notice it at all, and continued to slaughter the surrounding demon army. Even when he was about to enter the range of the double-bladed demon's camp, he suddenly made a turn, and continued to rush horizontally towards the middle and low-level demon's camp. Long Houchen was absolutely certain that he had obtained at least 100,000 merit points during this period of time. He had been slaughtering his way through the city. Such a good opportunity only came once, so he naturally wanted to harvest more. No one knew that while Long Houchen was rampaging through the demon camp, in the sky, a figure hidden in the air was always following him. At the same time, it was also paying attention to the green figure that was chasing after Long Houchen. Finally, the demon god, whose whole body was shining with green light, caught up. A dazzling green light suddenly fell from the sky, blasting straight at Long Houchen. The speed of the green light was extremely fast, and it gradually enlarged in the sky. The outer layer of the green light was actually burning with black flames, and it was like a greenish-black meteor, blasting towards Long Houchen. Just as it was about to hit, Long Houchen's body suddenly flashed with a golden light, and golden flames spurted out from his back. His whole body suddenly rushed forward at an astonishing speed, and wherever he passed, he forcibly cut a bloody path through the middle and low-level demons. In just a flash, he had rushed out 200 meters, and forcibly avoided the attack that was blasting down from the sky. A violent rumble sounded on the ground, and the intense greenish-black flames enveloped an area with a diameter of 30 meters. Within the violent flames, there were also some demons that hadn't died at Long Houchen's hands. They didn't even have time to scream before they were turned into flying ash and disappeared into the air. After this attack, the demon god in the sky also revealed his figure. The demon god, whose whole body was shining with green light, looked very much like a human. He was mounted on a green-winged horse, and he himself was a handsome man over 2 meters tall. However, whether it was him or his horse, both had a pair of bewitching red eyes. Under the cover of the green light surrounding him, they looked even more strange. He wore a green armor, and there was a green spear hanging on the side of the saddle of the winged horse. The green demons were riding demons, and he was ranked 70th among the 72 demon god pillars. He, flaming lion demon Anluosien, and winged ox demon Saigong could be considered old friends of the exorcist mountain pass. He had always been the demon god in charge of guarding this side. When the demon emperor dispatched troops to launch the holy war, he naturally wouldn't replace the 3 demon gods who were familiar with the situation here. Therefore, they had always been here. But when the demon army arrived, because of their own ranking, they had already been stripped of their position as the highest commander of the army. Of course, as demon gods, they still had an extremely high status in the demon army camp. How the demon gods discovered the Assassin Temple's sneak attack was a problem in the details. Moreover, this problem was something that the experts of the Assassin Temple couldn't solve no matter what. After more than 10 minutes of killing, more than 1,000 demons of the 6th step and above were killed. Demons were also living beings, and they could also breathe. After they died, their breathing would naturally stop. Because the experts of the Assassin Temple were moving from the outside, the tents that had stopped breathing were naturally on the periphery. The 7 great demon gods had always been relying on their demon god pillars to investigate the movements of the demon camp, even when they were cultivating or sleeping. Chapter 187. The strongest demon god sensed that there seemed to be a lack of breathing in the camp, so he increased the intensity of his investigation to sense the changes in the camp. With him taking action, the other fiend celestials naturally followed suit. Their action didn't matter, but the experts of the Assassin Temple immediately acted like birds, startled by the mere twang of a bowstring, and fled. In fact, if they could all calm down and hide at the first moment, the 7 demon gods wouldn't be completely sure that there was a surprise attack. After all, there were thousands of breaths missing in the camp, so it wouldn't be that easy to completely investigate. Perhaps the experts of the Assassin Temple would be able to achieve even more result. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. Once the assassins made their move, the 7 demon gods immediately confirmed their guess and immediately took action. At this time, it was already too late to dispatch the demons to attack. The enemy's surprise attack was very sudden, and since the other party dared to launch a surprise attack, they naturally thought of a route of retreat. Therefore, the 7 demon gods didn't even discuss and immediately went all out to investigate the enemy. As long as they could find the enemy in the camp, the demons' officers and soldiers would naturally take action. The facts proved that the 7 demon gods' choice was very correct. Weren't the experts of the Assassin Temple, who were anxious to rush back to the Exorcist Mountain Pass, discovered in the sky at the first moment? 2 demon gods went to chase, while the other 5 demon gods each began to investigate in the camp. It was also at this time that Cyan Demon Knight Air saw Long Houchen's figure. He couldn't see that the other party didn't have the slightest intention of concealing himself. After one attack, he turned tail and ran. Moreover, he brazenly charged into the demon camp from the ground. Air naturally recognized the gold foundation armor on Long Houchen's body. It would be strange if he didn't know that the other party was a rank 8 knight of the Knights Templars. However, this guy didn't want to live, right? Air even thought that Long Houchen was planning to commit suicide here. If he rushed into the demon camp with his own strength, even if every demon spat at him, he would be drowned. However, what shocked Shi-Er the most was that this human knight had an ability that was extremely proficient in ranged attacks. It didn't seem to consume too much energy, and no one could stop him wherever he went. Moreover, his speed of escape wasn't slow at all. At this moment, the Cyan Demon-mounted devil realized that this human was extremely cunning. His golden armor was definitely very eye-catching in the night sky, which was why he did not fly up. He was afraid that he would attract the attention of more demon gods. He planned to rush out and then escape back to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Not bad. Do you think I, the Green Goblin-mounted devil, am a fool? Shi-Er increased his speed as he chased after Long Houchen. At the same time, he began to accumulate power. That attack just now was his probing attack. Long Houchen easily dodged, causing Shi-Er's judgment of him to rise a few notches. However, he still didn't think that Long Houchen could escape. In terms of speed, the Cyan Demon-mounted devil had absolute confidence in itself. A powerful attack was launched at this time. Shi-Er rode his Cyan Pegasus and descended from the sky, directly blocking in front of Long Houchen. At the same time, a strong cyan light rose from him and his distant demon god pillar. Although Shi-Er was only at the peak of the 8th step, when fighting near his demon god pillar, he could display the strength of a ninth-step demon god, just like snake demon god Andamari. In terms of strength, Shi-Er was ranked 70th, a bit stronger than Andamari. Shi-Er's hands made a grabbing motion in Long Houchen's direction. Suddenly, countless cyan lights burst out from his back, like a huge cyan cage enveloping Long Houchen. Up to this point in the battle, the only weapon Long Houchen had used was the ripple of light. Seeing that Shi-Er was already blocking in front of him, Long Houchen's face, hidden under the mask of the Golden Foundation battle armor, finally revealed a faint smile. He had been waiting for this moment. The reason why he hadn't made a move before was to wait for the right opportunity. He was a knight, not an assassin. If he entered the tent like an assassin to assassinate the demons, the possibility of him being discovered would be much higher. Since that was the case, why was he in such a hurry to make a move? During the day, Long Houchen had clearly seen what the 8 demon god pillars of the demons looked like. He hadn't seen many demon god pillars, but the first time he saw one was in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. His memory of the 3 great demon gods that had nearly caused him and Xing Lingxin to lose their lives on the battlefield was incomparably clear. The Green Goblin Rider was the weakest of the 3 great demon gods in his memory. Flaming Demon and Luoxian had already died. When Long Houchen had followed Xing Yu out of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, he had already thought of his target. That's right, the Green Goblin Rider was a bit stronger than the Snake Demon God Andamari. However, one was ranked 70th, while the other was ranked 72nd. How big of a difference could there be? At that time, when Long Houchen and the others killed the Snake Demon God, weren't they next to the Demon God pillars? Shi-Er was a bit stronger, but one mustn't forget that the current Long Houchen had far surpassed that time. He wanted to give the Exorcist Mountain Pass another big gift, and that was this demon god in front of him. How could Shi-Er know that although he had made Long Houchen his target, he was in fact Long Houchen's target? Long Houchen's body, hidden in the Gold Foundation battle armor, had already turned completely transparent. It was the complete version of the body of Radiant. Facing Shi-Er's attack, he simply raised the ripple of light in his right hand. A golden ring of light rippled out from the ripple of light. A strange scene appeared. When Shi-Er's cyan cage encountered this golden ring of light, it unexpectedly disintegrated in an instant, as if it had never existed. Elemental Annihilation Ring of Light. The first time Long Houchen had seen this skill was when Gaoingjie tested his team's strength. This skill only had one use, and that was to disintegrate all elemental fluctuations. It was one of the strongest 7th rank skills of the Guardian Knight. The reason why it was only at the 7th rank was because its effect was only for an instant and couldn't be sustained. Otherwise, it would be a terrifying domain-level ability. Moreover, it was comparable to any forbidden spell. However, even if it was only for an instant, it was enough to make Shi-Er's expression change. The Elemental Annihilation Halo was a 7th rank special skill of the Knights Templars. It wasn't something that just anyone could learn. Gaoingjie's skill had left a deep impression on Long Houchen back then, so he had specifically found and learned it in the Illusion Cave. With his current cultivation of the 8th rank, using it was naturally as easy as using his own arm. After repelling Shi-Er's attack, Long Houchen made his move. He knew very well that he didn't have much time. If he wanted to kill Shi-Er, he could only go all out. He had to achieve his goal before the other demon gods discovered him. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. However, what he launched at this moment wasn't an attack. It was still from the ripple of light. A huge golden light barrier instantly spread out. In a short period of time, it actually expanded to a radius of 100 meters and a height of nearly 100 meters. It enveloped him, Shi-Er, and some of the low and mid-level demons around them. The Elemental Annihilation Halo startled Shi-Er, and he had some re-evaluation of Long Houchen's strength. At this moment, the golden light barrier that Long Houchen emitted stunned Shi-Er. This light barrier didn't have any power, and expanding it to such a large size would consume a lot of spiritual energy. What was he doing? Moreover, Sheer also noticed that after this golden light barrier expanded, it emitted a faint buzzing sound. The distorted golden color made it impossible for him to see anything outside. For Sheer, as long as Long Houchen's light barrier couldn't isolate the connection between him and the demon god pillar, he wouldn't feel any sense of danger. But isolating the connection between the demon god pillar and the demon god pillar wasn't something that could be done easily. At least in the history of the demons and the humans, there had never been a situation where they were so close to the demon god pillar. While Long Houchen had released this light barrier, the Cyan demon rider, Shi-Er, hadn't been idle. Anluoxian's death wasn't much of a blow to the other 7 demon gods, but it was definitely an important reminder. The 52nd ranked Flaming Lion Demon hadn't even been able to use his best ability before dying in front of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. To the other demon gods, this was quite a big shock. Therefore, Shi-Er didn't dare to be careless when facing Long Houchen, a rank 8 knight. When Long Houchen released the expanded Holy Light Barrier, Shi-Er also took out the Cyan Spear on the saddle bridge, pointed it towards the sky, and let out a strange long cry. Immediately after, a strange scene appeared. An intense cyan light suddenly erupted from Shi-Er's body. This cyan light soared into the sky and directly struck Long Houchen's Holy Light Barrier, creating a large hole. However, the Holy Light Barrier didn't break, nor did it produce any resistance. The Cyan Demon Rider, Shi-Er, had already begun to undergo an earth-shattering transformation. Shi-Er was 2 meters tall, and his appearance could definitely be considered handsome among the demons. However, at this moment, his expression quickly turned malevolent. The Cyan Pegasus beneath him spread its wings, and its enormous body seemed to melt as it fused with Shi-Er's body. One could clearly see a cyan armor that looked like muscles rapidly covering Shi-Er's body. What was even more disgusting was that on this cyan armor, there were thick veins that seemed to be constantly pulsating. Shi-Er's body had clearly expanded a lot, and his scarlet eyes flickered with an ominous glint. On his forehead, 3 long spiral-shaped horns grew out, and cyan light lingered on them. His appearance wasn't any stronger than that of the snake demon god Andamari. In fact, he looked even more malevolent. This was the demon god transformation that the demon god had used with the demon god pillar. Shi-Er's strength had instantly risen to the 9th tier. When the flaming lion demon Anluo had died, he hadn't even used the demon god transformation. Shi-Er didn't want to repeat that mistake. As long as he was in the demon god transformation state, he had many life-saving techniques that he could use. Not to mention that his opponent's aura was only at the 8th tier. Even if he was at the 9th tier, he was confident that he could escape unscathed. Long Houchen was very clear about what he had to do now. They were able to kill Andamari because Andamari had been seriously injured after clashing with the Anaconda King, and had used all his trump cards, giving them a chance. But the current Shi-Er was in his peak condition, and was equivalent to 11 strengthened versions of Andamari. A 9th tier powerhouse, and with the support of the demon god pillar, what gave Long Houchen the confidence to kill him? In a one-on-one situation, the chances of him defeating Shi-Er were infinitely close to 0. The difference between the 8th tier and the 9th tier was obvious. However, Long Houchen still did it, which meant that he had already prepared for everything. While Shi-Er was in the demon god transformation state, Long Houchen didn't stay idle. The ripple of light quietly disappeared, and at the same time, an orange-red light exploded from his left arm. All the middle and low-level demons within the range of the golden light were instantly smashed into pieces. Outside the light screen, the middle and low-level demons were still rushing in quickly, and the golden light screen he had used earlier had no power to stop them at all. What was this golden light screen? To be precise, it couldn't even be considered a technique, and it wasn't a holy light screen either. Instead, it was a technique that Long Houchen had developed during this period of time. This technique only had one function, and that was to block vision. Simply put, this was a tangible holy light screen, without any actual defensive or amplification effect. Any attack or object could easily pass through it except vision. Speaking of which, it wasn't difficult to use this technique. Long Houchen's inspiration came from his ripple of light. If the vibration frequency of the ripple of light was lower, and at the same time, the release of spiritual power was more subtle, then he would achieve his goal. He had experimented more than once, and it turned out that his creation was successful. Would the technique that Long Houchen painstakingly created be useless? Of course not. He had tailor-made it for himself. This was also a helpless move. Right now, his identity couldn't be exposed, but the enemy didn't care about this. When he encountered a strong opponent, if he couldn't display his full strength, wouldn't he be restricted? Therefore, this light screen wasn't targeted at Shi-Er at all, but at Long Houchen himself. It was specifically used to conceal his own ability. What the Cyan Demon Rider didn't know was that when Long Houchen used this light screen, it meant that Long Houchen was determined to kill him. Shi-Er shook the cyan spear in his hand, and suddenly, the surrounding air violently distorted. At the same time, he let out an angry roar, stopping the mid- and low-level demons that were trying to enter the golden light screen. If these demons rushed in, not only would they not be able to help, but they would also suffer great losses. With Long Houchen and Shi-Er's cultivation, even the aftermath of their battle wasn't something that the mid- and low-level demons could contend against. With a thrust of the spear, 9 cyan lights attacked Long Houchen. Each of these 9 cyan lights was only as thick as a chopstick, and looked much weaker than Shi-Er's previous attack. This was the result of the large compression of spiritual power. After all, Shi-Er was at the 8th stage, and even if he used Demon God transformation to reach the 9th stage, he still couldn't use the power of a domain. However, it greatly improved his strength in other aspects. For example, the attack in front of him was already equivalent to the power of the human Ling Gang. This powerful attack from the Ling Gang was no longer a probing attack, but a tyrannical move that could only be used after Demon God transformation. In the face of such an attack, Long Houchen didn't panic. A strong golden light suddenly lit up behind him, and his body shot out like lightning, rushing towards the 9 cyan lights. Want to dodge? The Cyan Demon Rider had been on the battlefield for many years, and had faced many human powerhouses. With this charge from Long Houchen, he immediately determined his opponent's goal. Light speed flash was extremely fast, and it might not be faster than spiritual power. Shi-Er's response was very simple. 9 by 9 converged into 1, and the 9 rays of green light instantly converged, transforming into 1, and directly bombarding Long Houchen. At this moment, something that the Cyan Demon Rider never expected happened. With a flash of purple light, Long Houchen, who was about to be hit by the 9 Ling Gang attacks, disappeared into thin air. That's right, he disappeared, not invisibility. This was because the tyrannical Ling Gang directly disappeared from the position where Long Houchen had rushed over, passing through the golden light shield and landing outside. A violent roar was heard. The Cyan Demon Rider's full power attack was terrifying. This was the demon's camp, and the unlucky ones were the middle and low-level demons. Unfortunately, the demons killed by Shi-Er couldn't be counted in Long Houchen's merit. Disappeared? Space travel? But how did he complete the space shuttle when I was giving him so much pressure? At this moment, Shi-Er's eyes were filled with shock. He could not believe that a Type 8 human could use his own strength to complete the profound art of space travel. And in the middle of a battle. From what he remembered, even if a Type 9 powerhouse wanted to perform space travel, it was impossible to do so while being locked on by the opponent. During a battle, the huge spiritual power fluctuations would cause chaos in space, and if one was not careful, one could get lost in space. No matter how strong one was, it would be impossible to return to this world. However, Long Houchen had disappeared just like that, without leaving a trace. The golden light shield also started to fade. He escaped? Shi-Er put down the spear in his hand, but he was still cautious, and did not remove his demon god transformation. Just as the Cyan Demon Rider was about to step out of the golden light shield, suddenly, the golden light became intense again, and the translucent light returned to normal. Everything in the outside world returned to its original state. Shi-Er suddenly turned around, and the spear in his hand swept out subconsciously. A green light shot out, and everywhere it passed, there was a series of tearing sound. Yes, his opponent had returned. However, when the Cyan Demon Rider saw his opponent again, his eyes could not help but reveal a hint of fear. Long Houchen's armor was no longer gold, but a dazzling purplish gold. On his chest, shoulders, and knees there was a sinister head, each slightly different from the other. The difference was in the horns of the heads. The mask on his face also turned purplish gold, and there were 9 more golden patterns on his forehead. Behind him, 4 huge purplish gold wings spread open, and under the sudden pressure of an incomparably terrifying aura, the demon god Shi-Er actually felt it difficult to breathe. Under the purplish gold cover, Long Houchen held a sword in each hand. In his left hand, the heavy sword shone with a green light, while in his right hand, the heavy sword shone with an orange light. Facing the green light from Shi-Er's spear, Long Houchen brazenly stepped forward with his left foot. Immediately after, an extremely tyrannical and distorted light rippled from his body. Terrifying spiritual power and elemental fluctuations swept across a large area like a tsunami. Within the light shield, the light was distorted, and outside the shield, the low and mid-level demons were almost completely swept away, turning into powder. 5 Attribute Chaos Elemental Stripping. This was the tyrannical skill that Hao Yue was most proficient in. The green light that Shi-Er had unleashed was almost instantly destroyed, and his body was also enveloped in this tyrannical, distorted light. Although he wasn't truly injured by the Chaos Elemental Stripping, the terrifying Chaos Elemental Stripping still crazily cut at his body, greatly consuming his spiritual power. More importantly, Shi-Er's speed was greatly reduced within this Chaos Elemental Stripping. He could only use all his strength to resist the impact of the Chaos Elemental Stripping. If he wanted to move, it would consume even more spiritual power, and he definitely couldn't be fast. It was also at this moment that Long Houchen moved. His left foot abruptly took a step forward, and the aria of the Goddess of Light in his right hand, which had already been unsealed, used the simplest method to chop down on Shi-Er's head. This seemingly simple attack was extremely tyrannical in Shi-Er's eyes. The incomparably sharp sword intent was completely contained within the layer of orange on the blade. The extremely terrifying spiritual energy fluctuation had completely disappeared and was now contained within. Even the surrounding Chaos Elemental Stripping quickly parted due to this attack, making a path for Long Houchen's attack. At this moment, the situation that the Cyan Devil Rider was facing was equivalent to countless Chaos Elemental Stripping pressing down on his body, and the only way out was through Long Houchen's brazen slash. Roar! Shi-Er's malevolent face let out a mournful roar, and the spear in his hand suddenly swung upwards. In that instant, his spear completely turned a dazzling dark green. Countless streams of black air instantly condensed on the tip of the spear, and it directly collided with the aria of the Goddess of Light. Ding! A crisp sound rang out. Long Houchen and his aria of the Goddess of Light were unexpectedly lifted up by the spear. As if he had been electrocuted, Shi-Er's body fiercely spasmed, and a small piece of the tip of the spear in his hand broke off. Just as he heaved a sigh of relief and was about to retreat, Long Houchen, who was in midair, swept over like a tornado. This time, it was not one sword, but 2 swords. Although it was impossible for Long Houchen to display his swift and fierce sword intent under such concentrated attacks, the aria of the Goddess of Light, Blue Rain, and Hibiscus of Light, In addition to the adamantine foundation battle armor and the amplification from Haoyue had completely surpassed Shi-Er's strength. And what he was displaying was the battle-killing revolving sword created by his father, the Knight of the Seal Long Xingwu. The complete version of the battle-killing revolving sword. When Long Haochun's cultivation rose to the 8th step, he was able to display the full power of this attack. He had already comprehended the true essence of the battle-killing revolving sword. The profound meaning of this attack was to make it impossible for the enemy to dodge or evade, to borrow the enemy's strength to strike back, and to strangle them to death. Clang clang. Under the two crisp sounds of collision, Shi-Er's body took half a step back, but there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. This was because he discovered that although Long Haochun's two swords were powerful, there was a huge difference in the power that erupted from the two heavy swords. But compared to the previous sword that was full of sword intent, there was still a big gap. It must be known that Long Haochun's Shura Slash, which was powered by his sword intent, had already injured the meridians in Shi-Er's arms. He was very clear that if it wasn't for the amplification from the demon god transformation, it would have been very difficult for him to withstand that sword just now. His strength has weakened? Is he also an arrow at the end of its flight? This was the thought that came to Shi-Er's mind. And it was also at this time that the power of the battle-killing revolving sword was displayed. Dense sounds of collision rang out, and terrifying spiritual power continuously spread out from the collision between the two. Now, no mid- or low-level demons dared to approach the range of their battle. The previous painful lesson had told them that this was a real land of death. Shi-Er's joy only lasted for a moment before it turned into panic and shock. He was horrified to find that Long Haochun, who was spinning rapidly in the air, had produced a strong suction force that was pulling his body. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to, and could only use all his strength to resist. However, every time he resisted, he could feel that part of the power in his spear would be absorbed by his opponent's two swords. And when Long Haochun's next round of attacks came, the attack power that erupted from his two swords would become a bit stronger. Not only was this kind of attack continuously consuming his energy, but it was also going to completely destroy him. How could Shi-Er not panic with such a skill? Even though this was the demon camp, even though he had the demon god pillar by his side, at this moment, he was the only one facing Long Haochun. The other demon gods had gone to chase the powerhouses of the assassin temple. Even if they discovered that something was wrong with his side, it would take them some time to rush over. What's more, the battlefield on their side was completely blocked by that golden light. From the looks of it, this golden light only seemed to be isolating the middle and low-level demons. A demon god that was enveloped by the light of the demon god pillar was fighting against an adamantine foundation knight. It seemed that the demon god should not be at a disadvantage. Therefore, the possibility of other demon gods coming to rescue Shi-Er was very small, at least for now. Shi-Er's spiritual power fluctuations increased with Long Haochun's, but only he knew that he was quickly approaching his limit. Once he broke through his limit, his resistance would plummet, and that would be the time of his death. The armor that the winged horse transformed into could not block those two epic-grade heavy swords no matter what. The Cyan Demon Rider didn't know how Long Haochun promoted his cultivation to rank 9, but compared to Long Haochun, he was at a huge disadvantage in terms of equipment. The Demon God Pillar was the strongest equipment of a demon god, comparable to a divine artifact. But this equipment had already helped Shi-Er to rank 9. There were other special abilities. But what about Long Haochun's body? He had already displayed at least 3 epic-grade equipment, and that didn't include the layer of purple gold on his body. However, Shi-Er didn't have the time or energy to analyze this. The cyan spear in his hand already had countless cracks, and it could collapse at any time. At this moment, Shi-Er suddenly roared. He no longer paid attention to Long Haochun's attack, and the cyan spear in his hand suddenly stabbed towards Long Haochun's body. Attacking the enemy's weakness, a method that would injure both sides. However, the battle-killing revolving sword technique was one of Long Xingyu's most powerful profound skills. Long Haochen had already comprehended the essence of the technique, so how could he be hurt by the battle-killing revolving sword? The spinning momentum did not change. 2 rays of light, one cyan and one red, fiercely slashed at Shi-Er's body, forcibly cutting through his 2 swords. In that terrifying whirlwind, Shi-Er's body was twisted into pieces at an astonishing speed. His thrusting spear directly passed by Long Haochen's body, not piercing Long Haochen's body at all. How terrifying was the defensive power of the fine gold foundation battle armor combined with Haoyue's fusion. It was enough to raise the defense of the fine gold foundation battle armor to the level of a divine artifact. In addition, the battle-killing revolving sword would produce a powerful airflow around Long Haochen's body. The longer it lasted, the more tyrannical this Ling-Gang level airflow would become. With the combined defense of the two, Shi-Er's attack only caused a string of sparks on Long Haochen's body before flashing away. But was the Cyan Demon Rider really dead? Think about the snake demon god Andamari. How did Andamari kill the Anaconda King that was stronger than him? He used the cicada shedding carapace. And at this moment, the Cyan Demon Rider was using the same move that Andamari had used before. A streak of cyan light split in almost an instant. Shui-Er and his spear were torn to pieces, but another Shui-Er appeared behind him. The demon god's incarnation. A normal avatar would split its body and return to the demon god pillar. But at this moment Shi-Er did not dare. Because the suction force on Long Haochen's battle-killing revolving sword was too strong. He did not dare to gamble. Under normal circumstances, it was very likely that he would not be able to return to his original body. Therefore, he could only forcefully complete this ability. There was no doubt that this would cause more damage to his source. At this moment, he had already returned to his original handsome appearance, but his face was deathly pale, and the scarlet in his eyes was much dimmer. Without any hesitation, Shi-Er, who had left the battlefield, turned and ran. Even for a demon god, it was not easy to use the cicada shedding carapace ability. It was also a huge consumption for them. After using this ability, he would not be able to use the demon god transformation for a short period of time. Moreover, all the equipment on his body would disappear. His strength would also decrease. Unless he used the demon disintegration technique, he would not be able to return to his peak state. Back then, Long Haochen and the others had killed the snake demon god in such a situation. Shi-Er was already afraid. In front of the battle-killing revolving sword that Long Haochen had used in his strongest state, he did not even have the strength to fight back. Everyone had borrowed external forces to advance to the 9th rank. How could he compare to a 9th rank favored? Shi-Er was not only afraid because of the strength Long Haochen had displayed, but also because of the aura he was releasing. Shi-Er could clearly tell that Long Haochen's aura had elements of Haoyue. In the face of such a situation, why would he not run? As long as he could send the news back and let the other demon gods join forces with him to kill Long Haochen, this merit would be enough for the demon emperor to favor him and directly promote him to the top 36 demon god. If the demon emperor wanted to raise the strength of a demon god, he had a lot of means. However, these ideas in the Cyan demon-mounted devil's mind all had a major premise, and that was that he had to leave alive and inform the other demon gods. Just as he was about to turn and run, the buzzing sound of the golden light barrier released by Long Haochen suddenly became more intense. At this moment, the golden light barrier not only blocked vision but also sound. Even if Shi-Er shouted, the outside would definitely not be able to hear him. Since he had used his original strength, Long Haochen was prepared for all contingencies and would not give the enemy any chance. A pitch-black light suddenly appeared in mid-air without any warning on the path that Shi-Er had to take. This light looked so poignant and beautiful, like a long and narrow leaf falling from the sky in the middle of the night. Naturally, it carried a sense of desolation. Death God's 7 ultimate, first ultimate, Death's downfall. Kai had finally made her move. When Long Houchen had brought Sheer here, Kai had been hiding at the side, watching the battle. She was waiting for Long Houchen's signal. Kai had never expected that Long Houchen's current strength would actually be enough to fight a demon god head-on, even if the demon god was only at the peak of the 8th rank. Not only was it a head-on clash, but Long Houchen was also able to win. Kai now truly understood why a great-grandfather would be jealous of Long Houchen's advancement. Long Houchen's position as the Sacred Knight leader was definitely well-deserved. Among the 8th rank Sacred Knight leaders, who could compare to him, who could fuse with Haoyue? Sheer did not know what Long Houchen had done, but Kai was very clear. When Sheer had launched that all-out attack, Long Houchen naturally did not rely on his own strength to escape into space. His cultivation was still insufficient to do so. He had been transported away by Haoyue. Through the bloodline contract between Long Houchen and Haoyue, Long Houchen was directly teleported to the plane that Haoyue was in, and then immediately began to fuse with it. At the same time, he returned with the 2 divine swords. The only thing that surprised and puzzled Kai was Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. She recognized the appearance of this divine sword, but its power and color had undergone an earth-shattering change. It was actually also powerful at the epic rank. Silently watching the battle below, Kai deeply felt the gap between her and Long Houchen. Perhaps, with the 7 absolutes of death, she could still defeat Long Houchen in terms of explosive power, but Long Houchen had countless ways to escape from the battle. She, who had used the 7 absolutes of death, had to pay a terrifying price. As Kai pondered, she felt deeply gratified. The man she liked was so powerful that no one could compare to him. She watched Long Houchen display his invincible might and fight the green goblin-mounted devil. Although Kai was not as infatuated as a love-struck fool, she could not help but feel even more emotional. Of course, as the reincarnation saintess, she would not let her emotions affect her judgment of the battlefield. The moment Sheer's clone was killed by the fighting-killing revolving sword, Kai knew that it was time for her to make a move. Chapter 188. There was no need for Long Houchen to hint anything. If she couldn't even judge such a timing, then Kai would have wasted Xing Yu's guidance over the past year. The sudden arrival of the Death Scythe finally made Sheer truly feel the threat of death. With a roar that reached the heavens, he used his arms to block the attack of the Death Scythe. The current Sheer was like Andamari back then. Having lost his strongest power, the amount of power he could resist against the Death God's 7 absolutes was very limited. However, his current state was still a bit stronger than Andamari back then. He wasn't instantly killed by Kai's attack. But even so, his 2 forearms were still cut off by the sharp Death Scythe, and a rain of greenish-black blood burst out. Sheer madly roared, all the muscles and meridians in his body instantly rippled, and a mouthful of greenish-black blood wildly sprayed out from his mouth towards Kai in front of him. At the same time, his body rapidly expanded. He was finally driven to desperation, and was forced to use the great demonic disintegration technique. However, he didn't even manage to let out half of his roar before it came to a screeching halt. His body suddenly stiffened in the air, and immediately after, there was a terrifying explosion. It turned into countless fragments that scattered in all directions. Not even a single intact limb was left. Knowing that the demon god had the ability to split itself and escape, how could Long Houchen only prepare a single battle-killing revolving sword for Sheer? The ultimate meaning of the battle-killing revolving sword was the power of the final attack. This powerful technique couldn't simply suck the enemy into its attack range, continuously strengthening the attack, regardless of whether or not it could completely strangle the enemy. In the end, what would happen to the power that he had borrowed from the enemy? That wasn't Long Houchen's own strength. If he ended the battle-killing revolving sword like this, then in the end, the power would only be wasted. Therefore, Long Houchen used his own continuous understanding of the battle-killing revolving sword, in addition to his own understanding of sword intent, to add the final attack to his strengthened version of the battle-killing revolving sword. After killing the enemy, all the power and Long Houchen's own spiritual power were poured into the two swords. Remember when he challenged Long Tianyin and used the cross/slash at the end? It was a powerful sword skill performed by fusing two epic heavy swords. Even Long Tianyin, who had an internal spiritual energy of over 200,000, had to use the Throne of God in order to block the attack. After being seriously injured, Shi-Er, who still had his back facing Long Houchen, became the first sacrifice of the fusion sword. Blue and red light fused in the air, faintly forming a strange luster, an incomparably deep black mixed with a bit of blue starlight. Even though the light only flashed for a moment, the sword intent that rose in that instant caused its power to completely fall on Shi-Er's body. The green goblin-mounted devil instantly collapsed and shattered. A dark green demon god's crown instantly flew out, trying to escape in the direction of the demon god pillar. Long Houchen's figure flashed, and he was already in front of it. The head on his chest suddenly came to life, opened its mouth, and forcefully swallowed the demon god's crown. Without a doubt, this demon god's crown benefited Long Houchen again. Kai-Er and Long Houchen landed at the same time. Come! Long Houchen waved at Kai-Er, and Kai-Er's spiritual wings moved slightly, and she was already by his side. With a flash of golden light, the two of them disappeared. The golden light barrier that had enveloped the battlefield slowly dimmed and collapsed. It was necessary for Long Houchen to immediately leave with Kai. The green goblin-mounted devil was dead, and the demon god pillar he possessed also instantly lost its luster. Even if the other 6 demon gods were stupid, they could still determine what had happened. How could they care about continuing to pursue the assassin temple's powerhouses? They turned into 6 streams of light and flew towards the battlefield where Long Houchen and Shi-Er were. Unfortunately, by the time they arrived, Long Houchen and Kai-Er were long gone. Shi-Er was left behind, but unfortunately, he was only a pile of minced meat. It was impossible for him to tell them what had happened. At this time, the majority of the Assassin Temple's powerhouses had already returned to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The demon god's pursuit was very effective, and at least 5 heroic assassins were forever left on the battlefield. Fortunately, they had escaped in time, and the 9th stage heroic assassins had returned. It was also under Xing Yu's leadership that they joined hands to block the pursuing demon gods, and avoided even greater losses. After being attacked, the demon gods were in a violent rage, and almost all of them used their demon god transformation. The difference between a 9th stage demon god transformation and an 8th stage demon god transformation was like heaven and earth. Xing Yu led the group of heroic assassins to resist with all their might, creating a chance for his companions to escape. The 8th stage heroic assassins were as fragile as paper in front of the 9th stage demon god transformation. In the continuous pursuit, the 6 demon gods had already gathered together, clashing with the Assassin Temple's main force. If the battle continued, the Assassin Temple's side would probably suffer even more losses. But it was also at this time that the green goblin-mounted devil's demon god pillar died. The death of a demon god was a major event for all the demons. The 6 demon gods chasing the Assassin Temple's powerhouses immediately turned back in alarm, no longer caring about leaving Xing Yu and the others behind. The battle between Long Houchen and Shi-Er sounded complicated, but in reality, the entire battle ended in just a few minutes. Why did Long Houchen use all of his trump cards? It was because he wanted to end the battle quickly. He chose the weakest Shi-Er, and with a series of calculations and his own strength that surpassed Shi-Er's, as well as perfect coordination with Kai-Er, he finally killed Shi-Er. Such a big gift for the Exorcist Mountain Pass couldn't be said to be small. Ever since Long Houchen arrived, 2 of the 8 great demon gods stationed here had already fallen, and even the demon god crown couldn't escape. For the demons, this was definitely a heavy blow. With a flash of light, Long Houchen and Kai appeared in the Tower of Eternity. There was no need to doubt the safety of this place. The moment the two appeared on the first floor of the Tower of Eternity, a purple light flashed, and Haoyue was removed from Long Houchen's body. The 5 heads were raised high, and they all revealed expressions of intense excitement. Although Long Houchen and Haoyue hadn't seen each other for a long time, in fact, their spiritual connection had never been broken. When Long Houchen woke up from his deep meditation, he immediately contacted Haoyue, and Haoyue seemed to be in secluded cultivation. The advancement of Long Houchen's cultivation was also a great boost to Haoyue. Haoyue's body became a bit heavier, and the scales on his body gradually emitted a purplish gold color. Although it wasn't strong, compared to before, there was a feeling of a qualitative change. Just as he separated from Long Houchen's body, his 5 big heads immediately gathered in front of Long Houchen, rubbing his body from different directions. That intimacy was like a child who had just met his father. Long Houchen stroked Haoyue's huge heads. His 2 hands were obviously not enough, so he hugged them one by one. He hadn't seen them for more than a year and he missed them. Xiaohua, Xiaoguang, Xiaoqing, Xiaolan, Xiaozi, the horns on their heads had also become more obvious. The most beautiful was the butterfly horn on Xiaolan's head. It had a bit of a feeling of spreading its wings and wanting to fly away. Its sapphire-like eyes were soft and gentle, just like a shy young lady from a noble family. Kai stood at the side, watching Long Houchen and Haoyue's intimate appearance. The killing intent in her eyes gradually dissipated. Even now, she still felt that it was somewhat unreal. In the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the one who dealt the fatal blow to the flaming devil lion Enluo was her great-grandfather, Xing Yu. Xing Yu was a famous 9th-stage powerhouse for many years, and was also the Assassin Temple's temple master. His strength was extremely tyrannical. Moreover, because it had happened suddenly, and under the influence of various factors, Enluo had died before he could display his strength. But the Green Goblin Mount Devil was different. Long Houchen had completely defeated him in a head-on battle. Kai could be sure that even if she hadn't interfered, it would have been difficult for him to escape death. The power of Long Houchen's final blow could be seen from the explosion of Houchen's body. The strength of a demon god's body was not inferior to their own spiritual power. Kai looked at Long Houchen with a gaze that, apart from the gentleness between a man and a woman, there was also heartfelt admiration. In the past year and a half, she hadn't brought a single cent with her, and had been bitterly cultivating. She was the clearest about how much she had invested. But even so, she discovered that the gap between her and Long Houchen hadn't shrunk. Instead, it seemed to have widened. In fact, Long Houchen himself had racked his brains, and at the same time, he had unleashed all of his abilities apart from the God's Descent spell. Haoyue's fusion replaced the God's Descent spell, and the true power of the 2 divine swords was unleashed. Under Yiting's efforts, these 2 divine swords had been nourished by the meteorite. Although the nourishment had yet to end, their quality had clearly improved. It was to the extent that even after Long Houchen had fused with Haoyue's power, it was still somewhat difficult for him to unleash their full power. Everything had gone according to plan. Today's slaughter, in addition to the battle and forbidden spell he had used when he had first arrived, had earned Long Houchen close to 1,000,000 merit points. In this way, he had earned the right to take Kai away from here. Not to mention even Long Houchen himself had a very strong feeling that this wasn't real. In his mind, it seemed as if the enemy's strength had become weaker. But in reality, it was due to the improvement he had accumulated over the past year and a half of hard work. If it were anyone else, they would probably have gone crazy after meditating for a year and a half. The state of deep meditation was even better than when Kai had absorbed the sword of samsara back then. Back then, at least Kai had still been able to think, but Long Houchen's thoughts had to be controlled and integrated into that special state. He couldn't relax at all, and it was like a taut string. Looking at it from another perspective, as the son of the holy light and a god-blessed, it would be abnormal for Long Houchen to not improve after meditating for a year and a half. Of course, he could only fight against low-level demon gods. But don't forget, he was only 20 years old. Hao Yue and Long Houchen were intimate for a while before they calmed down. Then, he immediately transmitted a thought to Long Houchen. Long Houchen shook his head and said, "No, now is not the time. We can't expose ourselves here. Moreover, there are other demon gods lying in wait. We can't be too hasty. Don't worry, there will be a time for you to show your skills." Hao Yue's suggestion to Long Houchen was undoubtedly targeted at the demon god pillars. Among the 8 demon gods outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass, 2 of them had already lost their masters. It was the best time to destroy them. Let alone Hao Yue's suggestion, it wasn't as if Long Houchen hadn't been moved. There were a total of 72 demon gods. The inheritance of the snake demon god had already ended. It could be said that every time a demon god was eliminated, the foundation of the demons would be shaken. However, Long Houchen was still very rational. When he thought of the Exorcist Mountain Pass dilapidated scene when he first arrived, he didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. Otherwise, if the Demon Emperor knew that he and Hao Yue had appeared here, he would definitely launch a large-scale attack. How would the Exorcist Mountain Pass resist the Demon Emperor? At that time, the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass would be plunged into an abyss of misery and suffering. It was even possible that the Assassin Temple would be destroyed in one fell swoop. Although Long Houchen didn't understand why the 3 strongest demons, the Demon Emperor, the Moon Demon, and the Star Demon, hadn't made any movements, at least the Temple League could withstand the current situation. Perhaps the Demon Emperor was afraid that both sides would suffer. Therefore, although they killed 2 demon gods this time, their demon god pillars couldn't be moved lightly. Long Houchen couldn't expose his identity at the border. Long Houchen smiled at Kerr and said, "Once we recover our spiritual power, we'll quickly return, so that a great-grandfather won't worry." Hao Yue didn't stay here and directly teleported back to his own world. Its ability seemed to have increased a lot. Long Houchen faintly felt that Hao Yue seemed to have reached a bottleneck and could break through at any time. Its huge body was somewhat bloated. If it evolved again, what kind of ability would it evolve to? Thinking of this, Long Houchen couldn't help but look forward to it. Hao Yue was able to destroy the demon god pillars. The stronger it was, the more advantageous it would be for their future operations. The green demon Mount Demon Deity was dead. For the demons, this was a huge blow. In the central tent of the demons, 6 demon gods with different expressions and tyrannical auras had solemn expressions. The entire tent was filled with an incomparably oppressive atmosphere. "We absolutely can't let this go." An angry roar broke the silence in the tent. The one who spoke was a tall man with a pair of wings on his back, a bull's horn on his head, and an iron-gray face. It was the winged bull mad demon Sai Gong. It was no wonder he was so angry. All these years, it had always been him, the flaming lion demon Enluo-Xian, and the green demon Mount Demon Deity guarding the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Now that Enluo-Xian and Deity Sai Gong had died in battle, how could he not feel sad? Hearing his words, the other demon gods all had different expressions. Among the 6 demon gods, the one sitting in the main seat was actually a woman who looked like a human. Moreover, she was extremely beautiful. She wore a long pink dress, had long pink hair, and a pair of mesmerizing pink eyes. Her skin was fair and flawless, and her appearance was extremely beautiful. Her figure was extremely hot, and she was over 1.8 meters tall. If she were a human woman, she would definitely be considered tall. Moreover, she was extremely coordinated. Her long dress had very little fabric at the chest area, revealing a deep ravine. A pair of towering breasts seemed as if they could burst out of her clothes at any time. If one paid careful attention, they would discover that the other demon gods didn't dare to make eye contact with her. They didn't even dare to let their gazes linger on her. This was the 12th of the 72 demon god pillars of the demons, demon god Siddhi. The ranking of the demons' 72 demon god pillars was extremely important. To be able to rank in the top 12, one could well imagine her strength. She was also the highest commander of the demon army outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass. All the demon gods here were under her command. Although she only had the appearance of a woman, none of the demon gods were unconvinced by her. Siddhi's expression was grave and stern, appearing even colder. However, she didn't rush to declare her position. Instead, she cast her gaze on the winged ox demon Sai Gong. When Sai Gong was glanced at by her eyes, his extremely strong anger immediately subsided, and he sat down resentfully. Siddhi said indifferently, "Everyone else, speak up. What do you all think?" "I agree with Sai Gong. We can't just let this matter rest. The humans dared to sneak attack us. If we don't teach them a profound lesson, won't they become even more arrogant? And Luoxian and Shi'er are both dead. If we can't accomplish anything, none of us will be able to bear His Majesty's blame." The one who spoke was a demon god whose entire body was shrouded in a black shadow. This demon god Long Houchen and Kai should be familiar with him. He was the one who had appeared within Luoxian on the city wall and sneak attacked Kai. However, in the end, they went for wool and came home shorn. They suffered a double loss. The flaming lion demon, Luoxian, was buried outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Among the 72 demon god pillars, he was ranked 45th. He controlled the Earth Dragon tribe's invisible demon god, concealing demon god Burn. Siddhi narrowed her eyes and said, "Have the casualty figures been calculated?" "They've already been calculated." The winged ox demon Sai Gong immediately said, "The casualties are disastrous. More than 1,400 of those above the 6th step have died. More than 3,000 of those below the 6th step have been injured." Even for the demons, which were an army of experts as common as clouds, this level of casualty was quite huge. Especially those demons above the 6th step. They couldn't be nurtured so easily. Hearing his words, Siddhi's eyes immediately revealed a sharp and cold light. She slowly stood up, the towering peaks on her chest slightly swaying. "Tomorrow morning we'll launch an attack. This time we won't rest until we break through the Exorcist Mountain Pass." She was truly angry. Although she didn't want to admit it, concealing demon god Burn was right. 2 demon gods had died. This wasn't something that could be easily explained. Since the start of the Holy War, this was the first time there had been demon god-level casualties. "Siddhi, shouldn't we discuss it again?" Sitting on the other side, a tall demon god said in a deep voice, "His Majesty's intention is to continuously consume the human strength and not to break through." Siddhi's ice-cold gaze swept across him. "What? You have an opinion?" That demon god immediately became sluggish. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. With her female appearance, she was able to command an army to threaten the Exorcist Mountain Pass. If Siddhi didn't have a few tricks up her sleeve, how could she suppress the other demon gods? "Do as I say." "Yes." The other demon gods got up one after another, turned around and left. Exorcist Mountain Pass. Xing Yu's anxiety was finally alleviated. Long Houchen and Kai had returned together. This operation could definitely be considered a success for the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Although they had lost a few hidden heroic assassins, they had inflicted even more serious damage to the demons. At least 1/5 of the demons' experts of the 6th step and above had died under their surprise attack. Moreover, although they didn't know what happened on Long Houchen and Kai's side, they had seen the light rays of the demon god pillars of the Cyan Demon riding demon faction disappear. Could it be that Long Houchen had killed a demon god? Xing Yu didn't dare to believe this was true. No matter what, Long Houchen was only at the 8th step. But he didn't dare to be sure. He had seen how powerful the forbidden spell that Long Houchen had used was. Clearly, he couldn't use the standard of an ordinary 8th step expert to measure him. After Long Houchen and Kaya recovered their spiritual energy in the Tower of Eternity, they immediately returned to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. After they appeared in the void, they immediately hid their bodies. Kaya was naturally invisible, while Long Houchen had already put on a large cloak. Using his spiritual energy to distort the space around him, he concealed his existence. Kai directly grabbed his arm and flew back. This was the advantage of having a companion. Otherwise, in order to conceal his identity, Long Houchen would have to think of a way to return to the surface. You really killed Shi? Xing Yu's eyes widened as he looked at Long Houchen and Kai in front of him. Kai stuck out her tongue and took a step back. Without any spirit of loyalty, she pointed at Long Houchen and said, "It was all arranged by him, and he was the main one who did it. I only attacked once." Xing Yu immediately looked at Long Houchen. He wasn't the only one here, there were also the Assassin Temple's chivalrous and hidden chivalrous assassins. After they returned, they immediately gathered together. Because Long Houchen and Kai hadn't returned, Xing Yu didn't let them disperse. They were waiting for Long Houchen and Kai's news. If they waited for a bit longer, they might have to kill their way into the demon's barracks to look for Long Houchen and Kai. Long Houchen nodded and said, "It can be considered good luck." The Cyan Goblin mounted demon was ranked 70th among the demon's 72 demon god pillars. It was relatively weak and was ambushed by us. After successfully killing it, the demon god's crown was devoured by my demon beast companion. The demon beast companion he was talking about was naturally Long Houyu. Of course, in the hearts of these assassin powerhouses, it was Star King. Listening to his simple explanation, the upper echelons of the Assassin Temple looked at each other in dismay, completely speechless. Was the Cyan Goblin mounted demon easy to deal with just because it was ranked at the bottom? They had been dealing with this demon god for a long time. With the boost from the demon god pillars, Shi-Er's combat power was enough to reach the 9th tier, and he also had a series of life-saving abilities. Even with the explosive power of these assassins, they hadn't been able to kill him after so many years, but Long Houchen described it so casually. How did he succeed? Almost every assassin powerhouse had an incredulous look on their faces. After a short moment of shock, Xing Yu's expression gradually turned ugly, and it was extremely ugly. "Did you forget what I said before we set off? I said, don't attack the demon god. What if you failed to attack Shi-Er? How would I explain it to the Knights Templars?" This hero was truly enraged. Out of all the powerhouses present, only he knew what Long Houchen and Kai meant to the Temple League. If Long Houchen fell just like that, not only would he not be able to explain it to anyone else, it would also be the same. Long Houchen couldn't show weakness at this time, because he represented the Knights Templars, and he was the acting Holy Knight leader. "Temple Master, please calm down. I've already made a detailed plan before I took action. Even if we failed to attack the green demon-mounted demon, Kai and I would definitely be able to escape unscathed. I have a relic that can travel through space. Under any circumstances, it can bring us into another space, and we can stay there for a long time. Previously, we also relied on this relic to kill Shi-Er and escape safely from the battlefield." Hearing the word relic, Xing Yu couldn't help but be stunned, and the other assassins revealed similar expressions. A relic that can travel through space, this sentence practically attracted all their attention. This was the first time they had heard of this kind of relic. Moreover, for assassins, the temptation of escaping into another space for a long time was really too great. "Is it from your Knights Templars?" Xing Yu subconsciously asked. Long Houchen shook his head and said, "It's mine, or to be more precise, it's our team's." Xing Yu cast his gaze towards Kai and saw that his great-granddaughter nodded without the slightest hesitation. Sighing inwardly, Xing Yu said, "All right, since it's like this, I won't say any more. In any case, you killed a demon god for the Exorcist Mountain Pass, and this is also a great contribution. However, after tonight's operation, I can foresee that the demons' counterattack will immediately begin. Their vengeful mentality has always been the heaviest. Everyone, gather the magic crystals we collected this time, and we'll give them a taste of their own medicine. We'll let them have a taste of the might of the magic cannons." Yes. The group of chivalrous and hidden chivalrous assassins clearly showed excitement in their eyes. It had been a long time since they could fight to their heart's content like this. Just as Long Houchen said, assassins weren't good at defending cities, and the night and darkness were their true stage. After this sneak attack, the demons' strength had been greatly reduced. Even if they launched another attack on the Exorcist Mountain Pass, their strength would still be limited. Moreover, with the help of Long Houchen's forbidden spell, the morale of the soldiers in the Exorcist Mountain Pass had greatly increased, and the city's defenses had also recovered a bit under the repair of sufficient manpower. "Temple Master, I request to participate in the defense of the city," Long Houchen immediately declared. Xing Yu snorted and said, "You can't not participate even if you want to. What our Exorcist Mountain Pass lacks the most are priests. You and Han Yu will play the role of priests for me. If we can use that forbidden spell again, that would be the best." Long Houchen was speechless, and inwardly said, "I'm a knight, not a priest." However, Xing Yu had let him off with great difficulty, and he didn't want to invite a snub at this time, so he obediently agreed and retreated to the side. Kai smiled sweetly and followed at his side. Ever since Long Houchen returned, Kai-er's mood couldn't be better. It was as if she had a backbone. The demon's attack came without any warning. At daybreak, the demon army in the distance of the Exorcist Mountain Pass suddenly moved. A large number of dual-blade demons were like a tide, rushing towards the Exorcist Mountain Pass. While they were rushing, a pair of blade-like front claws constantly stabbed into the ground, emitting unpleasant sounds. Darkness and blood once again enveloped the Exorcist Mountain Pass. At the top of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, the remaining half of the brilliant Angel Knight Regiment from the Knights Templars were transferred to the top of the city wall. Previously, they had always acted as a reserve, and were only dispatched to defend the city in the most critical moment. Even so, they had already lost half of their troops in this year's Holy War. It wasn't that Xing Yu didn't want to use them, but they were the help of the Assassin Temple from the Knights Templars, so how could he easily let them defend the most dangerous city wall? Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, Xing Yu and Xing Lingxin, this grandfather and grandson pair, didn't use this Knight Regiment. The brilliant Angel Knight Regiment's Knight Regiment, of course, couldn't act as priests. They excelled in team battles, and their defensive power was astonishing, but their cultivation limited them, and they weren't good at healing. But when used to defend the city, they were much stronger than ordinary soldiers or the Assassin Temple's powerhouses. The Knight Regiment calmly stood in a line on the city wall, and every knight had a large number of soldiers and Assassin Temple's powerhouses as support. The demon's large-scale counterattack was inevitable, and this battle was bound to be incomparably dangerous. Xing Lingxin, who was familiar with the demon's tactics, was already prepared to deal with the demon's all-out attack. Therefore, all of his trump cards were brought out. After the brilliant Angel Knight Regiment's Knight Regiment stood in formation, they suddenly turned around and performed a knight salute towards the second layer of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The knight's right fist pounded on their chest, and the sonorous sound immediately resounded above the city wall. Killing intent suddenly burst out, and the sonorous sound greatly stimulated the morale of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Xing Lingxin naturally knew that they weren't saluting him. Although the brilliant Angel Knight Regiment obeyed his orders, this kind of etiquette only belonged to the Knight Regiment. Long Houchen, who stood at Xing Lingxin's side, took a step forward, and pounded his chest with his right fist. In the next moment, he suddenly pulled out his ripple of light, raised it high into the sky, and shouted, "For the glory of the Knight Regiment!" His loud shout reverberated through the entire Exorcist mountain pass. At the same time, a dazzling golden pillar of light erupted from his heavy sword. It was like the first ray of dawn had lit up the top of the Exorcist mountain pass. "For the glory of the Knight Regiment!" All the Knight Regiment issued a sonorous and angry shout at the same time. They all knew that the Lord Saint Knight Chief had come to the Exorcist mountain pass. Although he was only the acting Saint Knight Chief, to the brilliant Angel Knight Regiment's Knight Regiment, they felt as if they had seen a relative. To them, it wasn't important who the Saint Knight Chief was. What was important was that the Knights Templars unexpectedly dispatched him to the Exorcist mountain pass. What did this mean? It meant that the Knights Templars had helped the Assassin Temple, and at the same time, it also meant that the Knights Templars hadn't forgotten about them. Wasn't the arrival of the Lord Saint Knight Chief to command them? Moreover, on the first day Long Houchen arrived, he had already made great contributions twice in succession. Moreover, he had used the incomparably powerful forbidden magic, Sacred Rain, to conquer the entire Exorcist mountain pass. He had only used a day's time, and now his position in the Exorcist mountain pass was faintly comparable to that of Xing Yu. To the brilliant Angel Knight Regiment's Knight Regiment, this was an incomparable glory. There was no profession that paid more attention to glory than a knight. Glory was life, and the Knight Regiment possessed a lofty sense of glory. Their fighting strength was the most frightening. At this very moment, after the brilliant Angel Knight Regiment had experienced such a huge consumption, it was as if they had found their souls again. Even if they were just standing on the second floor of the Exorcist mountain pass and watching these brave warriors, they could still feel the crazy fighting intent that was being emitted from their bodies. Xing Lingxin stood beside Long Houchen and inwardly cursed. He was also extremely good to these Knight Regiment, but in the end they were still Knights Templars. Long Houchen hadn't even truly come into contact with them, but he was actually able to raise the morale of these Knight Regiment to such a degree. How could he not feel envy, jealousy, and hatred? Of course, this envy, jealousy, and hatred was completely benign. The person beside him was his future son-in-law. No matter how jealous he was, they were still family. Of course, it was impossible for Xing Lingxin to not feel a sense of loss in his heart. His position in the Assassin Temple wasn't low, but compared to Long Houchen's position in the Knights Templars, it paled in comparison. Xing Lingxin's heart was rapidly turning this thought, and he was constantly issuing orders. "Are the magic cannons ready?" "Ready." There are a total of 21 intact magic cannons that can be used in battle. They have all been installed with magic crystals. Xing Lingxin pondered for a moment and said, "How long can they attack?" "If we continue to attack, the magic crystals we have on hand can last for 24 hours. Considering the possibility of the magic cannons overheating and exploding, it would be best to cool them down every quarter of an hour." Xing Lingxin nodded. The magic cannons could be used again, and his heart was finally filled with confidence. "Have the reserves entered their designated positions?" "Everything is ready." "Good." Xing Lingxin's eyes flickered with a cold light, and his body imperceptibly emitted a dense majesty. "Pass down my order. After the dual-bladed demons begin their attack, the warriors are to cooperate with the brilliant Knight Regiment to block them outside the battlements. The magic cannons are to be aimed at the sky. Once the enemy's air force appears, ruthlessly attack." "Yes." Long Houchen stood at Xing Lingxin's side, listening to his orders. From Xing Lingxin's orders, he could hear that the situation of the Exorcist mountain pass wasn't optimistic. Although the Alliance had been continuously providing support, the demons' continuous offensive had nearly exhausted all the defensive tools of the Exorcist mountain pass. Although the magic cannons could be replenished this time, but in terms of strength, the Exorcist mountain pass was still at a clear disadvantage. Now, He could only hope that the 6 great demon gods wouldn't join the battle. Otherwise, today's situation wouldn't be easy to deal with. "Commander, look!" A soldier who was looking into the distance suddenly shouted anxiously. Chapter 189. Sheng Lingxin hurriedly walked to the forefront of the second layer of the city wall and surveyed the distant scene. His complexion immediately changed a bit. Long Haochen also followed him to the top of the city wall to survey the scene, and his heart immediately sank. He saw that in the distant demon army's barracks, 6 enormous light pillars soared into the sky, illuminating the entire demon army. And these 6 enormous light pillars were slowly moving towards the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Without a doubt, these 6 light pillars were the 6 great demon gods of the demons. From the information given by the Exorcist Mountain Pass, among these 6 great demon gods, other than the winged bull Mad Devil, who was at the peak of the 8th step, the other 5 were at the 9th step. After drawing support from the demon god pillars, their strength could only be described as terrifying. At this moment, the demons displayed this battle formation. It was clear that they wanted to fight to the death with the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Moreover, the 6 great demon god pillars moved at the same time, pressuring towards the Exorcist Mountain Pass. For the ordinary demons, they also had a considerable degree of amplification. At the same time, for the demons' morale, it was even more indescribably huge. Sheng Lingxin's expression clearly revealed a bit of panic. Although he was doing his utmost to restrain himself, but from his current silence, it could be seen that the demons' sudden all-out attack had put this Exorcist Mountain Pass military chief under enormous pressure. "Uncle Sheng, don't worry. Soldiers come with arms, water with an earth weir." Long Haochen whispered in Sheng Lingxin's ear in a voice that only Sheng Lingxin could hear. Sheng Lingxin turned his head to look at him, and slowly nodded. Long Haochen pulled Kai Er's hand and after thinking for a bit, said, "In a large-scale battle, morale is the most important. We absolutely cannot weaken our side's morale. Kai Er, let's go up. Let's give them a look." As he spoke, Long Haochen raised his right hand and a golden light shone beside him. The Star King appeared beside Long Haochen on a 6-pointed star. Ever since he bathed in Long Haochen's divine rain that day, Star King's aura clearly became somewhat different. The layer of gold on his pure white fur became even more distinct, and his pair of eyes also became even clearer. Long Haochen floated up and landed behind Star King. Sheng Lingxin was startled and said, "Long Holy Knight, don't act blindly without thinking." Naturally, he couldn't call Long Haochen's name on the battlefield. Long Haochen gave him a reassuring gesture, and after calling out to Kaya, he lightly tapped the Star King's abdomen with his heel. The Star King unfolded its wings, and with power from its 4 hooves, it directly soared into the sky from the top of the second layer of the city wall. At the same time, Kaya turned into a gray light and followed behind Long Haochen. Her huge black wings unfolded at the same time, and she closely followed Long Haochen, climbing high into the sky above the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Long Haochen beckoned to Kaya, calling her to his side. At this moment, the dual-bladed demons below had already begun to climb up the Exorcist Mountain Pass, and the demons' main force was constantly advancing. After the two had a simple exchange, they nodded to each other and immediately separated to the left and right. The Exorcist Mountain Pass was built on a mountain, and both sides were high peaked. Only the front would receive the enemy's attack, which was a natural stronghold. Relying on such a natural stronghold, the Exorcist Mountain Pass had already stopped the demons' attacks countless times. Long Haochen and Kerr flew, and very quickly, they arrived at the edge of the Exorcist Mountain Pass's city wall. Their movements similarly attracted the attention of the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Riding on the back of the Star King, Long Haochen lightly patted its neck. "Star King, in a moment you have to seriously experience it. It should be very beneficial for your evolution." The Star King turned its head to look at Long Haochen, and gratefully nodded its head. Long Haochen took a deep breath, and withdrew his ripples of light. He slowly lifted his left hand, and the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield's orange radiance was not released. Long Houchen was slightly surprised. He raised his head to look at the sky, and suddenly came to a realization. That's right. Right now, it was dawn, the time when the sun and moon alternated. It was also the time when the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield failed. However, if the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield failed at this time, it would destroy the plan he had just discussed with Kai. What should he do? Right now, he and Kai could be said to be the focus of everyone's attention. If there was a careless mistake at this time, it would be a huge blow to the morale of the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass. Right now, he was like an arrow on the bowstring, and had no choice but to release it. On the other side, Kai floated in the air, and after she glanced at Long Houchen, she raised her right hand above her head, and made a gesture in the air. The enormous Death God's scythe quietly appeared in her hand. Immediately, with Kai-Er's body as the center, a large expanse of gray energy spread out, and dense killing intent soared into the sky. Tyrannical spiritual energy mixed with a killing intent that seemed to have substance frantically rose. Kai-Er's long hair fluttered without any wind, and her eyes gradually turned as black pearls. The Death God's scythe slightly trembled, and the distorted gray ripples also increased. Long Houchen could clearly see the situation on Kai-Er's side. His original plan was to release the ability of a god's favored together with Kai. After all, the demon army in front of them didn't have demons like a Bao who understood him. Moreover, he had also changed his mount, so it wouldn't be easy for the demons to recognize him. Moreover, even if they recognized him, he couldn't care less. If the Exorcist Mountain Pass couldn't be defended, would it matter whether his identity was exposed or not? Seeing that Kai had already begun to release the Death God's aura, while Long Houchen couldn't use the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield to draw the divine power of the Goddess of Light, he couldn't help but feel anxious. Time waits for no man. He simply didn't have any more time to think. At this time, Long Houchen had no other choice. He already couldn't care whether his identity was exposed or not. Since he couldn't draw it with the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield, then he could only use the aria of the Goddess of Light. After all, he was still only at the 8th step, and not the 9th step. Relying on his own strength and borrowing the power of the Goddess of Light was far from enough. And although Kai-Er's cultivation was weaker than his, the Death God's scythe, this divine weapon, could be completely used by Kai-Er. Just as Long Houchen was prepared to use the aria of the Goddess of Light regardless of everything, the Star King transmitted a message to him. Master, let us try again. Perhaps we can combine our strength to once again ignite the power of your shield. Long Houchen didn't have time to think. He made a prompt decision. All right, then let us try. The golden light under Star King's feet shone brightly, and its wings spread out. The golden hexagram under its body quickly spread outwards, and with every circle it spread, the golden color would become a bit denser. It could be clearly seen that the white fur on Star King's body was changing from the roots to golden at an astonishing speed. Without a doubt, this Starlight Unicorn King was already using its original power. On the Star King's forehead, a golden star emitted a dazzling brilliance. The golden light flowed upwards and merged into its horn. At first, it was only a tiny bit of golden light, but it rapidly expanded like a prairie fire. A golden pentagram quietly expanded, spreading to a diameter of 10 meters, enveloping Long Houchen and the Star King. Within the range of the golden pentagram, it was just like when Long Houchen used his charging skill, as a huge golden fog rose up. In the process of rising, the light mist still maintained the 5-pointed star shape and did not dissipate. After the Star King used this ability, Long Houchen felt the light elements around him suddenly become incredibly condensed, as though all the light in the air was gathering towards them. In the sky, the dawn that had just appeared had dimmed significantly. Their presence, however, seemed to illuminate the entire battlefield. What Star King was using at that moment was his innate skill, which was also the Starlight Unicorn's strongest skill. In the entire tribe, only he, as the king, could use it. It was called Star Domain. The Star Domain was similar to the domain of a Type 9 powerhouse. However, because the Starlight Unicorn could only reach the Type 8 realm, the range of the domain would not be too large, only about 10 meters in diameter. The effect of the domain was similar to the Starlight Unicorn's ability, amplification, a complete amplification. The star domain could increase the density of the light elements within the domain by 10 times in a short period of time, absorbing all the light from the outside world at a crazy speed. In this process, the Star King was burning his own life force. He could not sustain it for long, or else his life would be in danger. The fact that he was willing to use the star domain meant that the Star King was completely convinced by Long Houchen, and was willing to sacrifice himself to help him. After all, there was no contract between the Star King and Long Houchen would not force him to do anything. This was the amplification of a domain, and although the Star King's cultivation was not at the level of a forbidden spell, it was extremely close. Without hesitation, Long Houchen channeled all his spiritual energy into the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield. Previously, at dawn and dusk, when Long Houchen discovered that the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield could not be activated, he tried to channel a large amount of spiritual energy into it, but it was all in vain. The spiritual energy he channeled was like a clay ox entering the sea, and there was no reaction. Even if he used up all his spiritual energy, it was to no avail. After unleashing the power of the Divine Snail Shield of Sun and Moon last time, Long Houchen recalled the chant left behind by the Divine Snail Shield of Sun and Moon before it died. Only then did he vaguely understand the mysteries of the Divine Snail Shield of Sun and Moon. However, because his cultivation was not high enough, he had not been able to unleash the full power of the Divine Snail Shield. The defense of the sun and moon, the heart, the guidance of light, the protection of God. Dawn at dawn, sunset at dusk, sun and moon alternating, Divine Snail Shield. If Long Houchen's guess was correct, the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield could even unleash the power of a Supreme Divine Snail Shield when the sun and moon alternated. At this time, he did not have much time to think, and could only forcefully channel spiritual energy into the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield to see if it could unleash its power. After all, it was best not to expose his identity by using the aria of the Goddess of Light. This time, Long Houchen had sufficient confidence in channeling spiritual energy into the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield. The adamantine foundation armor and the Star King had become his solid support. Moreover, with the help of these two, his spiritual energy had directly increased to the level of the Ling Gang. Directly channeling the Ling Gang into the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield was naturally much more effective than spiritual energy. Long Tianyin had once told Long Houchen that if he wanted to activate the Throne of God, he needed the Ling Gang. Ordinary spiritual energy would not be able to cause any reaction from the Throne of God. Not only the Throne of God, based on Long Tianyin's experience, almost all artifacts needed the power of the Ling Gang to be activated. Kair, who could activate the Death Scythe at the 7th level, was a special case. To be precise, the Death Scythe was already a part of her body. At most, she could not fully unleash the power of this artifact, but she could use it. But on the other hand, how much did Kair have to pay for it since she was young? How could the pain of reincarnation be endured by ordinary people? The Ling Gang continued to channel spiritual energy into the shield. Long Houchen felt the changes in the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield with all his heart and soul. On the other side, the murderous aura released by Kair had become stronger and stronger. In terms of power, it was far above Long Houchen's. The star realm released by the Star King could not be compared to the purification power of the Death Scythe. At this time, the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield gave Long Houchen the feeling of a bottomless abyss. After his own spiritual power was transformed into the Ling Gang, it was quickly emptied. At the same time, the spiritual power of the adamantine base armor was also pouring out rapidly. Together with the light elements gathered by the Star King through the Star Realm and the spiritual power of the Star King, they were all injected into the shield through Long Houchen's body. Although the Sun-Moon Divine Snail shield still had no reaction at this moment, what made Long Houchen happy was that in the distant sky, a touch of white had already lit up, and the sun gradually revealed a trace of golden light. Whether it was dusk or dawn, the real time when the sun and the moon alternated was very short. As long as the time when the sun and the moon alternated, Long Houchen could activate the Sun-Moon Divine Snail shield. Using the epic Sun-Moon Divine Snail shield to activate the God's Descent spell was enough to deter the enemy and boost the morale of his own side. The war was already in full swing. The demon army swept over at an astonishing speed. On the walls of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, under the leadership of the brilliant Angel Knight Regiment, the officers and soldiers used their lives to firmly suppress the dual-bladed demons below the walls, making it impossible for them to climb up. In the distance, among the demon army, the dual-headed demon vultures and demon birds were rushing over at an astonishing speed. They were a dense black mass that seemed to cover the sky. With the support of the 6 demon gods, these flying demons appeared even more ferocious and awe-inspiring, like dark clouds pressing down on the city. On the ground, a large number of low-level demons were mixed in the dual-bladed demons' camp, gradually moving closer to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. A large number of demon eye warlocks and flame demon manticores had already begun to prepare their magic. Emotion demon god Sidi was furious. This time, she had already gone against the will of the demon emperor, truly mobilizing the full strength of the demon army to take revenge for the 2 demon gods. Her plan was very simple: destroy the Exorcist Mountain Pass, and even occupy it as a fulcrum for the demons to enter the Temple League at any time. Of course, she wouldn't continue advancing, otherwise she would really be challenging the prestige of the demon emperor. She still didn't dare.